Hello, hello. Okay, it's very hard to come back at the end of the coffee break. Clearly, 20 minutes were too little, too few, but we still need to get mobilized. Otherwise, I will use my power to delay dinner. So please slowly take your seats. I do hope that colleagues who are still there enjoying the coffee break will join us shortly. All right, so we'll restart anyway, and I hope that the rest of the colleagues will be coming back. The next session will also be, I think, very, very interesting. It's called Towards a European Policy on Technology Infrastructures. And in essence, in this session, we will present to you the main recommendations of the expert group on technology infrastructures that we organized a bit more than a year ago. After an intensive year of working, the expert group, which had the mandate to advise the Commission on the shape of the future policy for technology infrastructures. At the end of the work of that group, we have two key reports, a main report on the main directions with 5 key recommendations for setting up a European policy on technology infrastructures, and also an analytical report on user needs, which is very important because it gives a perspective on what are really the needs of the users, the needs of companies to access capacities that are provided by technology infrastructures. So for those of you who have not read yet the reports, I invite you to read the reports, but today you will get a teaser of what is inside. The expert group worked very intensively, and I'm very grateful to every single person who was a member of that group. We had 22 either member state representatives or stakeholder representatives or industry representatives. In most cases, there was more than one person from each organization, so I think that our group was altogether more than 50 people actually really doing the work. And today, indeed, as a teaser and as an invitation to the discussion, we will present the main recommendations. Here, I would like to welcome 5 colleagues. There are more actually in the room of those who worked in that expert group. But I would like to invite 5 colleagues who would make the introduction to the recommendations. And I would like to invite Marie Soulot, Juliette Forneris, Andrea Fischer, Mirka Gottberg, and Ricardo Migueix, whom you all have already seen. Please take a seat. That's okay. All right, so I took the liberty to call these people a dream team of the expert group because they will be the one exposed to present the recommendations. But as I said, I'm really grateful to every single person who worked with us. Without further ado, as I said, the report is online from the Valentine's Day. We published it on the 14th of February. So many of you are familiar with it. Today we will present the main recommendations, and then in the second part of the session, I will invite colleagues from representing similar organizations who are not part of the group to react to what they hear and how these recommendations resonate with them. But to start, as I mentioned, we have 5 headline recommendations, and here I would like to invite one by one, and that's why Ricardo was put here, because he is presenting recommendation number 1. So very good job. One by one, we have a couple of slides for each recommendation, and I give the floor first to Ricardo, then to Juliette, then to Andrea, then to Marie, and finally to Mirka to present each of the recommendations. So, guys, the floor is yours. Please use the mobile mic. And we have a clicker here, so you can be self-sufficient with changing the slides.
Well, Thank you so much, Dominic, once again. And with this dream team, it is my job is very easy because I'm going to present to you what is, it may seem like a technicality, but it's in fact the foundational aspect of all of this, which is what is a technology infrastructure? How is it defined? And why should we start here? Well, to start with, do we have slides? I thought we had slides.
We don't have slides, but if you use the clicker to change them, that will work.
All right. Okay. Excellent. So far, technology infrastructures have not had a consistent definition. We have had, they were not formally defined in any document, both at EU level and at national level, and not in a consistent way. And so the only previous, as you can see there in the references, the only previous reference came from a 2019 Commission staff working document. And this was useful, of course, at the time to start with the discussions of what role should technology infrastructures assume, but it really lacked recognition. And so it created a gap, and this gap created confusion, it created lack of clarity. And that lack of clarity is very visible today in the discussions that we assist. And so the work group really tried to provide a definition because the Council in May 2024 asked explicitly the Commission to put forward a clear and operational definition of technology infrastructures. And that request has a lot of political relevance and strategic relevance and also urgency. We spoke about speed this morning quite a lot. So technology infrastructures, they are not industrial production sites, they are not research infrastructures. They really have a unique and strategic position in the ecosystem together with the other types of infrastructures. And so what specifically do the generally technology infrastructures do? Well, they serve multiple industrial sectors and foster cross-sectoral collaboration. That's very, very important that many technology infrastructures do. They bridge the critical gap between research and development and the market with very specific skill set that is needed to do that. And they have been investing a lot of that. That is culture, that is institutional culture, that is technical skill set that is needed. And to do that, in doing that, they enable technologies to be tested, to be validated, and to be scaled. And they also help companies very directly, and especially the small and medium enterprises and the startups and the scale-ups to de-risk innovation before that innovation enters the market. So, here's the proposed definition, and I'm not going to read the whole definition, but I'm going to give you time to read. I'm going to start by saying just this, and pay attention to each word. Technology infrastructures are facilities, equipment, capabilities, and resources. So you've seen in all of these dimensions, the physical dimension, the skills dimension, and the resource dimension that is required to develop, test, upscale, and validate technology. So then, of course, the definition goes on, and it says that technology infrastructures enable and accelerate, another word that came up this morning, and the A2 report, accelerate technological innovations towards societal and market adoption, and foster industrial competitiveness in a very direct and pragmatic manner. This is the distinction of these specific infrastructures and their skill set and their resources brought together. So they provide services that span from pre-competitive applied research to small-scale production. They include test beds, they include pilot lines, clean rooms, living labs, and they are typically hosted by non-profit RTOs or universities, especially technical universities, and we have in the panel afterwards Cesar, who is going to comment that, and also Earto, or even dedicated technology centers. Many of them are here in the room. But they can also be semi-public or privately owned and physical or digital in nature. So this is an important dimension that was also referred to in the morning. So to finalize, this recommendation and this definition is clear. And what the expert group really requests or recommends is that this, once agreed by the member states, this recommendation should be, or this definition should be, systematically used in all relevant EU and national legal acts, funding programs, and strategic documents. So this is really the foundation of a coherent European strategy, and it sets the stage for the 4 recommendations that my colleagues are going to present next. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. It's always difficult to follow up after you, and especially with my voice. I apologize very much.
Not at all, Juliet. Not at
all. I have the pleasure to present recommendation 2. I just want to take 2 minutes before that to thank the Commission, to thank all the experts. It's been personally a great experience for me to be part of this group, and I also want to thank the Danish Agency for Higher Education and Science to nominate me in this expert group. I think Denmark has been very engaged on the front of technology infrastructure with road mapping and other exercises. So I think the place of the expert is more of the country than the person, really. So now that we have the definition in place in an almost simple way, we can talk about how to improve access to technology infrastructure. I think from this first session this morning, we've understood that technology infrastructure are cornerstones of EU innovation and competitiveness. Despite that, there are many enterprises, and particularly SMEs and startups, that face barriers to access them. During the work of the expert group, there was a survey made where more than 300 companies in Europe from more than 20 countries have been asked about their use of technology infrastructures. There are also a lot of other reports on this topic, and basically the key challenges that have been illustrated by these surveys are, first of all, limited financial and human resources to engage with TIs in the private companies. There's a potential high access costs and lack of in-house expertise also in these companies, making the access difficult for them. We talked also about, we've heard this before also today, the lack of visibility and information about available TIs. We had, on the contrary, a good example of visualization, but it's still a difficult issue. Also, other barriers. Access conditions to TIs can be discouraged by legal, financial, administrative framework, complex collaboration models, and so on. There's also limited awareness of facilities beyond regional and national borders. It might also be difficult for companies to go from one to another, but this is something that we need to work on. And some of the organization like mine, operators of TIs, we know each other. We should also be able to facilitate this, recommending companies to go to other countries for their test and development. And then some companies are also hesitant to engage with them, not being sure what the results might be. So once we need, again, more and more cases showing what did we get out of this collaboration, how did we get the full benefits of working with a TI. So the expert group recommends 3 things: a European charter for access to TIs, so streamline guidance, simple and transparent access procedure across the EU, supporting measures to improve the visibilities of the TIs and the services that they can offer, and then increasing opportunities and support for companies to access these infrastructures, including these in other regions. And this includes proposal for specific measures at different levels, both the EU, national, and TI level. And with that, I will spare you more of hearing my horrible voice for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to recommendation 3, which is about an effective investment prioritization mechanism. And let me start with that the expert group also agreed, of course, that building up infrastructure capacities is one way of fostering EU competitiveness, which is called on in so many reports, such as Draghi and others. But on the way to build up those infrastructure capacities, at the moment, we are facing 2 key challenges. So one is not sufficient collaboration among users, TI operators and funders, and also between research and technology infrastructures. And the other one is the lack of an investment prioritization mechanism for TIs at EU level and mostly also on national level. And this, to us, seemed very important as financial resources are getting more and more scarce, so we should really work on that one. And against this background, the expert group recommends to establish such an EU-level investment prioritization mechanism. And the mechanism should be aligned with user needs, because that's why we are actually wanting to improve the technology infrastructure landscape. And it should also keep in mind the technologies of strategic importance. Moreover, the mechanism should be guided by a robust set of criteria. So, for example, strategic relevance, feasibility and impact, financial viability, but also addressing service and facility gaps and others. And we also think that it's important to overcome the first challenge that I mentioned before, and therefore the mechanism should help to build interconnected networks of research infrastructures and technology infrastructures, and therefore create more integrated and efficient innovation ecosystems. We had this word ecosystems just before in the high-level panel as well. So and also in the high-level panel before, the question was, what's the next action? So the expert group actually was also thinking about how do we want to start this new process, and that is why we also recommend to implement a limited set of pilot actions designed to test a European approach on the technology infrastructures. And we also recommend to accompany this with an impact assessment and a lessons learned. So we get, in the long run, a clearer picture of what to do and where we have to head to. And another question is also what funding sources should be coordinated or should be coped by with this investment prioritization mechanism? And the clear answer of the expert group is think big. So think of all these funding sources that are available, for example, relevant EU funding programs, but also public-private partnerships. And of course, national and regional funding is also an important source. We heard some of the plans of the EIB just before, so they are also working on it, which is very good to hear. And finally, we have the private funding sources. So whatever is out there, use it. That's our recommendation. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Andrea. This brings us to recommendation 4. To address this fragmentation of the TI ecosystem, but also to implement the recommendation my colleague just mentioned, such as announcing accessibilities or sharing skills and investment or building large-scale infrastructures. We need, of course, a well-coordinated governance structures. However, for now, at the moment, this governance at the EU level is limited. We lack of common views and priorities, and also a recent mapping has shown that at the member state level, we sometimes lack of strategy specifically dedicated on TIs, and sorry, this is not the good slide, and funding programs. Furthermore, there is also a lack of dedicated space for discussion on TIs at the EU level, for exchanging views and experience, identifying priorities and challenges. That's why the expert group on technology infrastructures recommend establishing a new multi-actor governance based on 2 layers: an horizontal governance focusing more on strategies, and thematic coordination. So this is the second slide. So if we are looking more in depth, the horizontal coordination, the aim of the horizontal coordination is to work on strategic planning and define investment prioritization. It will also develop a space, such as a platform for a strategic reflection, mutual learning, or and developing common approach. In terms of structures, it would be composed of an advisory forum, gathering all the important relevant stakeholders, such as high-level member states, European Commission, but also industrial umbrella organization and TIs operators. In terms of implementation, we recommend also to create a new dedicated space specifically dedicated to TIs, enhancing also industrial policies as much as airline policy. On the other side, the thematic coordination would be responsible to facilitate networks on TI, on specific key technologic area, and also coordinating funding for agreed TI investments. We recommend for utilizing existing structures such as European Partnership for such as European Partnership to engage with key stakeholders and regional authority, ensuring also alignment with EU and regional strategies. In terms of tools that can be developed in that context, it would be establish a network of TIs in specific technology area, facilitate mapping, develop platform to connect TIs with users, and last but not least, frameworks for joint investment decision. Yes, your turn.
Thank you very much, colleagues. On behalf of the expert group, I would like to present you the recommendation number 5, where all comes together. So the expert group recommends that setting up a technology-dedicated infrastructure program, where the EU should enhance actions to provide funding and support for the development of technology infrastructures in areas where EU intervention is really needed. Dedicated funding should be made available from the EU programs supporting research and innovation and competitiveness to pool resources at EU national and regional levels, but also public and private funding to be pooled to large-scale investments in TIs. And this includes a top-up investment component idea to incentivize national and regional funds by offering national and additional EU contributions for strategically aligned projects. So these investments and instruments would support technology infrastructures in strategic areas for the EU, addressing gaps identified by TI roadmap exercise. And then there is this European dimension component. Just a minute. European dimension component, which is dedicated to funding activities to enhance networking and collaboration, like we have heard today many times, across borders, regions, and between TIs and RIs. And funding should be provided for the development of new technologies, definitely, because this is the whole point, that we need these type of infrastructures for scaling up and to support the competitiveness and as well as companies. But also to create new technology infrastructures at EU level and upgrades to existing ones to ensure that they will continue to be effectiveness and to provide the support services needed to tackle these competitiveness challenges. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Mirka. Many thanks, all the colleagues here. It was just a flavor of all the work, actually condensed into 5 main points. So now, before I invite the panel to have some reflections on these recommendations, I actually wanted to invite you, all of you, and I will need that device because normally this should. So okay, I haven't not used this yet. Okay, so this is the summary of the recommendations as you see. Just as a reminder to all of you, but what I would like to invite you to, and I don't see actually the slide, oh, where is it? Okay. No, here? That's it. Okay, perfect. There is some hiccup. So basically, what I would like to all of you invite you to do is to have a look at that and think which of these recommendations you think are the most important to implement. Which are key for you, which resonate the most with you, which you would prioritize. Normally, if all the technology went well, you can vote for 3 different recommendations, not just your favorite. And we can now move to the other screen. I would actually like to come back to that a little bit later. So after you have voted for that, we'll keep it open for some time. We will then, during the panel, have an open question to you, where you would be able to ask questions to the panelists and also to colleagues who presented the recommendation. And now, okay, now I need to play a little bit with that. Okay, I don't really have control over the device anymore. No, it's much too far. We need to go back. We need to go back to the panel. Go back. I tried, go back. No, I need to go back to the, oh yes, many thanks. And thanks for the support. You see, technology and me are not always friends. So now I would like to thank you very much. I will come back to you at the end of this session again. And I would like to invite here to take the floor, to take the armchair with me, our colleagues who we ask to provide their insights into what they think about these recommendations, how they resonate with them, and how they look from the perspective of their respective organizations, having not been part of the expert group. And first of all, Claire Scantlebury, Director General of Europa Bio. Please join me here. We have also Matthias Björnmalm, Secretary General of CESAR, Technical Universities, and we have Willy Wagen, CEO of Sustainable Energy Catapult in Norway. Fabrizio Prior apologizes greatly. He had some family emergency this morning, so he could not join us, unfortunately. So this is the 3 of you. And indeed, first I would like to invite you to simply share your perspectives on the reports, share your perspectives on the recommendations. As I said, how they resonate with you, how they look like from your perspective, from the experience that you have with the challenges that we face around the technology infrastructures and set up of a policy for that. I will start with Claire. with you. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks very much. So I will give a quick introduction. My name is Claire Scantleberry. I'm the Director General of Europa Bio, and we are the industry association that represents innovative bio-industries across all sectors. So we work in the whole spectrum of biotechnology, and it's a pretty fast-growing spectrum to work in because it's expanding very quickly as it's going from niche to norm very quickly in terms of an industrial technology. You know, the majority of next-generation medicines are biotech-derived. A significant majority of novel elements of the agri-food supply chain are biotech-derived. It is becoming a central and mainstream technology for industrial activity. And that's backed up with the economic stats that we collect within Europa Bio. So in our work with the Warsaw Institute, we know that employment within biotechnology product production, the employment is going up 6 times the pace of the EU average. We know that labour productivity is 3 times the scale of the EU average. It is the very definition of a knowledge-driven economy. And Europe has done traditionally, it's done well in here. It has quite significant capacity already, as Steph has already alluded to. But of course, we must look at ourselves globally rather than regionally. It's no point Europe growing 5% if China grew 25%. It's all about where we sit within a global position at the moment. And I really enjoyed reading the report. I have a lot of notes. I thought it was extremely comprehensive. It was practical. It identified, it was quite open and honest about where the strengths and the weak points were. And I think that's very important to have. And so I looked at this from the perspective of our members. And so who are our members? We have members from across the spectrum. So we have pilot plants and technology infrastructures already as members. So the Biobase Europe pilot plant is one. The National Institute for Bioprocessing Research and Training in Ireland is another one dedicated to pharmaceuticals. But we also have very innovative SMEs. We have mid-sized companies striving to establish themselves as a global player. And we have multinational large companies. They all have different needs and scales and speeds. You know, often they are extremely different to each other, but they have a common thread when they come to using technology infrastructures is that how does this de-risk, accelerate my path to market and reduce the cost? How does this make me more competitive? And that's a question that they will all ask. And when they're looking at collaborations on what is a very sensitive, valuable element of their work, they will be looking for clarity, certainty, confidence, and risk management. And we talk about risk management in biotechnology because before a company hits the market, their data and their intellectual property is the only asset that they have. They cannot afford a dilution of any of their knowledge or the risk that it becomes available elsewhere. And so what I would love to see from, what I think would be a great metric for success from technology infrastructures would be a normalized integration into their early development business strategies. I would like to see this commonly used as small companies in particular go to investors, go to large company partners and say, this is an integral part of my building block to market. And I don't think we're there yet, but that's what I think would be a really great market metric to use for technology infrastructures. And I'm fully aware, having worked with companies for over 25 years in the biotech sector, there's always a sort of moon on the stick syndrome in that they want it free, they want it fast, they want it exclusive, they want it immediately, and they want a really comprehensive service. You know, this is a gold-plated service that they wouldn't get from the most expensive contract research organization in the world. So it's always balancing what is going to be the right relationship that they have with the technology infrastructure. So when I was reading through the recommendations, I agreed with pretty much all of them. This is really good. What I would like to see is a higher level of focus and formal recognition of the need for technology infrastructures to be integrated into legislative development. We sit here now within Europa Bio with a legislative cluster of over 20 different legislations and strategies that are going to need to be shaped by biotech and also need to recognise biotech. It needs to be integrated and written into them. And that's what we've set ourselves the rather large challenge to do. We have things like the Biotech Act, we've got the Startup and Scale Up Act, we've got the Innovation Act, the Life Science Strategy. You know, the list is super long, and some of these are highly technical legislations, others are financial. You know, there's a really big set of legislations. So what I'd like to see for technology infrastructures is their formal recognition and inclusion in legislative development. If we take the Biotech Act, for example, that will hopefully include an omnibus legislation, which could touch perhaps 20 different existing legislations. And so what could you do for technology infrastructures within an omnibus legislation around biotechnology? You could significantly accelerate their ability to grow, become established, and accelerate their partners to market. A few other comments that I had from looking through the report, which again, I think it's really great. I think there's always a matter of Mohammed must go to the mountain when it comes to trying to persuade people to use your services. It's like we saw from Steph earlier, like you have with public-private partnerships, go to where the companies are, because they are not going to come and find you. You need to go to business conferences. You need to be an engine of business development yourself. They need to be interconnected. We cannot have these enabling technologies in silos. I was at an extremely interesting NATO biodefense conference last week, and it was pretty eye-opening, I have to say. But the key thing is that where Europe has a really strong scientific base for biotechnology, China has the same strong biotech base, fully recognises the value of data, and has already massively accelerated it through combining it with AI. Europe cannot do these things with individual technologies alone. They have to be de-siloed. Also, the strategy should be 20 years long. This is not one commission mandate. This should be a really long-term investment into always ensuring that the technology infrastructures have cutting-edge technologies. And that may need the recognition that they cannot often operate as financially viable on their own. They always need investment into them. So be realistic about the tools that are being used. It's going to be very hard to put a business engine on top of an academic chassis. So it's being fully aware of what you are trying to achieve. But I think my takeaway from the report is that TI should be fundamental to next generation delivery in Europe. They need to be next generation standards, regulatory sandboxes, regulatory engagement, market access. These should be the flagships to bring very novel technologies through to economic fruition. And that ends my lecture.
Thank you very much, Claire. Many thanks for the comprehensive review, almost like a peer review of the expert group report. I think that's great. What I definitely take home and will remember is that TI should be an integral building block of going to market. I think that's really a punchy statement. And also integration into legislation. This is something when we around the definition of TIs we have also discussed in the expert group. Matthias, coming from the perspective of universities as hosting organizations, what is your take on that report and the recommendations?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you also to the expert group and to the presenters of the report, which indeed is a very good starting point. So CSR is over 50 leading universities of science and technology all across Europe. My closest member university is just around the corner here, Warsaw University of Technology. I saw from the participant list, the 350 or so registered, there were 4 or 5% from universities. So I understand the vast majority of you are maybe not working on a day-to-day basis. So a very short recalling here on the perspective that we come from. So universities are unique in society because they're the only one connecting the full knowledge triangle up to the highest level of education. And within that, technical universities stand out as they are the ones that uniquely combine a strong focus on fundamental frontier research with applied activities leading to a real-world impact, including accelerated tech development. Infrastructures are integral to the activities of universities across the full mission, so from scientific excellence, technological innovation, and including education and training. And as we've just heard, academics engage with infrastructures as users, designers, governors, and evaluators. And universities as institutions, particularly tech universities, engage as hosts, partners, co-funders, national nodes, etc., to help form the backbone of the landscape. All of this is just to say that universities of science and technology and their communities are deeply engaged and invested in both research and technology infrastructure and want to see this move forward swiftly and these two areas to succeed along the full knowledge value chain, where research and technology infrastructures we see as inherently connected with each other. Some examples just from very recent engagements I had. So we had the MyFab that is collaborated or coordinated by Chalmers in Sweden, NorFab coordinated by NTNU, another member, Czech Nanolab coordinated by Brno University of Technology. All of these are advanced clean room facilities and infrastructures and also nano equipment. In the morning, you have PhD students and professors. Midday, you have startups coming. And in the afternoon, you have industries and mature industries engaging. So this, from our perspective, while it can be useful and good to distinguish between the usages of scientific research and tech innovation, for example, when it comes to nuances around funding streams, access conditions, legal mechanisms, etc., we really see that the departure point here should be to also make sure we create synergies, collaboration. De-siloing is what we just heard here, and we do not create fragmentation in the infrastructure landscape. We see a very good and useful way forward as taking a kind of an outcome or purpose-driven approach to what we do and to the definitions as they move forward. We see this as the most effective way to move. From this, to me, follows that research and innovation should be in the driving seat when it comes to elaborating around governance, management, and operation, and the usage of these science and tech infrastructures. All of this informs then the next steps around definitions, we have access, investment prioritization, governance, and funding programs. I want to wrap up here with a very short takeaway of something we heard earlier today. Some of you may have been at the Sorbonne or knew about the Sorbonne speech that took place yesterday, where the Commission President reiterated what she has said previously, which is that we need to put research, innovation, science and technology at the heart of our efforts. And I think this is exactly the right way. And I congratulated previously, and I do it now on stage, on record here, the colleagues in the Commission that are putting forward this European strategy on research and technology infrastructures, seeking a unified and integrating approach, avoiding siloing, pursuing even de-siloing, but seeing this as part of a broader landscape and a broader box that we can work in to accelerate across research, innovation, science, and technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Thanks a lot for supporting the approach to have a holistic perspective on infrastructures, but also for highlighting the knowledge triangle. I think that's also very important, and the talent dimension, also underlined in the initial panel, is an important one that we should not underestimate when we speak about infrastructures. Willy, you come from a different perspective. You're actually running an infrastructure, and you're running a very specific type of partnership that was established in Norway. So that brings in both the public and the private partners. So how does that, where we speak a lot about mobilizing private investments and engaging the private sector in common joint actions, what is your experience from that perspective, and how do you see these recommendations from you?
Yes, thank you first of all for having me. Yes, we are running within the green tech field, a technical infrastructure. And we are maybe a bit different because we are then together with industry running this infrastructure. So we are 10 industrial partners who, in a way, says what is important. And when we invest public money into this infrastructure, we always co-invest with industry, so that the industry needs to put as much on the table as the government does, and for sure that for sure, you know, there is no industry that puts money on the table unless it's relevant for the industry itself. So in that case, we have been very targeted, and we have been invested in those really most important assets that the industry needs to have to develop their their technology. Back to the recommendations and the report. I mean, running a TI, I really recognize, especially the findings from the questionnaires there. Recognize also the different statements from the larger entities and also the SMEs, and it's pretty typical how they operate. But the larger entities typically are very skeptical in the start, and then when they engage, they really see, having the benefit of all these smaller companies also connecting to their problem. So if I take one example, we are testing like a full-scale combustion engine on clean ammonia at the moment. And it's a large Finnish company called Wärtsilä. They are on like every second ship on the horizon. And of course, they have thought about everything within their own engine box. But there is probably 100 other things that needs to be in that system to make this work. And some components in that system are made of gold or platinum, or definitely not a sales product. And who can help making those components into a sellable asset? And then, of course, we as a TI can challenge industry, can challenge research to see, okay, who can make this gold box into something made of plastic or composite, or something that is sellable, scalable for the industry. And of course, being this spider, I think that's a really important role also for the TI. On the point of improving access, I strongly believe, and we have been running this from the start, that we need to think like a company. There needs to be someone in our organization who has like a sales role, so that we are really customer oriented. We put the customer first. And we're really working on with the sales process, a CRM system, so that we are really also following up our customers. And I think that is also a key. Okay, well, one thing is, of course, to make the things known and have common conferences, but there must also be something that forces the TIs to be customer oriented. Secondly, also, the persons working in our organization is mainly from industry, so that they understand what industry needs, they understand how, the language of industry when they talk to industry, and that also, of course, helps. Yes, in terms of finance, I think it's important to do enough, especially where we are in the energy field. It's expensive things that we invest in, and of course this is, expensive things needs to be reused by new users all the time, and of course our journey has been a bit financed with a little too late. Maybe that's normal for these kind of organizations, but anyway, since we are co-investing with industry, the industry has been ready with more money on the table than what the government so far have been putting up with, and in that case we are in a bit of a situation where the potential for doing more is much greater than what we are currently doing. So very much welcoming a TI initiative. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Willy. I like the salesman culture and the customer orientation. I think that we should not forget about that. Thank you very much on the first reflections on the report overall and the recommendations. And then maybe if you could very quickly, so that we don't run out of time in this session, think about what kind of benefits for your organizations or the type of organizations that you represent would actually come out of the implementation of these recommendations, assuming that a European policy would more or less reflect what was recommended by the expert group, and how you would see that you could engage actually, at which level, in what kind of activities, where would your interest lie? Matthias, maybe I'll start with you.
Thank you. Well, from when it comes to the benefits, what we really see is the potential to strengthen these type of ecosystems that exist increase the visibility and the interconnectedness, accelerated tech development underpinned by scientific excellence, like particularly the ones that are related to, hosted by, and engaging with university communities, and then training talent and also leaders in the governance, management, operation, and usage of these type of infrastructures. The contributions, I already said, of course, with the research, education, and innovation, I'll crown these areas, but something that may not be as immediately obvious is the role as a trusted ecosystem anchor. So as a player like Warsaw University of Technology, like other those type universities all across Europe that are well known, have been around for a long time, build connections with their community, with the mature industries, where the SMEs know about them. Many of the scale-ups and startups are the students coming out of these type of universities. So acting as a trusted ecosystem anchor, that is a key contribution that we play in these type of ecosystems.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Willy?
Yeah, of course, being part of a bigger family, understand who has complementary skill set to what we are doing, and in both ends, you know, if companies are not mature enough to come to our full-scale facility, maybe they can, we can point them in another direction. And of course, I think, you know, we can really do more with less if we get this well-functioning ecosystem. And I think, you know, it's really, you know, getting this connected, you know, to be able to point, to be able to utilize other organizations on a low key as possible. I think that will really make a strong value proposition for the TIs.
Thank you, Willy. And Claire, do you see that from the...
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you say. It's what we do, what we want to achieve for Europe is that we want our innovation to anchor and grow from here. They're going to go to global markets. That's what is part of becoming a successful company. But we would like them to do that from here rather than go somewhere else to mature and sell back into Europe. And I think the TIs that we've talked about, the whole framework that we've talked about here is creating a critical mass of skills, capacity. It is a safe and trusted and stable environment. And obviously we say that in these interesting times in which we live now. The US originally published an executive order on biotech and biomanufacturing, I think in 2022. And that got the EU going to put its own communications and biotech act in place, and the US has now rescinded its own executive order on biotech and biomanufacturing, but then immediately published another report, a biosecurity report saying that the US is massively underprepared and under capacity. It has a skills crisis, it doesn't have manufacturing capacity, and this is what Europe, particularly with TIs, can do, so it should become more ambitious and continue to do what it's already doing.
You're saying this should be another reason to choose Europe, is what you're...
Another way, yeah.
Thank you very much. So priorities, working on priorities, supporting training, also leaders, not only experts and ecosystem actors. Really, I think that the message that every Minister of Finance would love to hear, we can do more with less. Not necessarily to be taken home too literally. And Claire, yes, you also believe that an effective strategy for TIs could actually make companies, make more companies stay in Europe, and that's great. This is also one of the drivers for us. So many thanks for that. Now I would like to come back to the Slido. No, before we come back to the Slido, actually, well, I come back to the Slido, but to the questions. So let's see if that works. Okay, I would like to see the questions, the answers. The questions. If you do, we have any questions from the audience? I heard there are some, but I don't see any of this on the screen. They are okay. I will need a magnifying lens. No, that's fine. That will work. Okay, so we'll take some questions from the Slido, and then we'll also see with you. So the one which is voted the most is, and fine, I can read it. Thank you. Why do we need to separate between research and technology infrastructures? Are they not part of the same ecosystems, and we should reinforce connections instead? From the panel, I mean, maybe, Matthias, universities kind of typically host both, so...
Well, I feel it's a pointed question, perhaps, but from my side, of course, yes, we should reinforce connections, and we should, efforts that are needed in this area should not lead to siloing or fragmentation. It should lead to strengthening the ecosystem as a whole. This is, I think, clear from my perspective. But dedicated efforts around technology infrastructures, I acknowledge and see that there is need, for example, around access, perhaps, funding streams, modalities. There are a range of areas that are different. If you look from an outcome-focused perspective or a purpose-focused perspective, that makes perfect sense that we need to have some complementarities. But as a whole, yes, we should reinforce connections across the ecosystem.
Thank you. Really, from an organization that runs the infrastructures.
Yes, thank you. Now, I think it's about scale and it's about TRL, and it's about, you know, companies when they are asked, they have more problem also to find relevant infrastructure within research, because that's maybe like 5 years before they need it themselves. So there is something with the time to market here, there's something with the scale, and there's something with the TRL that makes it harder to put it into the same box.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Claire, user perspective.
Yeah, I think they are both essential parts of the ecosystem. The ecosystem is really big, but I think they play slightly different roles in slightly different times. You know, as you're going up the TRL levels, risk and access to data is incredibly important. So companies that are more mature and going up the TRL levels are not going to go into what you would call classical academic collaborations. So it's not about they have to protect ownership and access to data. The more mature something, the closer something gets to market. Otherwise, your investors and your lawyers are going to switch that off.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Before I go back to Slido, anyone would like to take the floor from the room? Please, I mean, we will try to somehow transport the mic. No, it's important for online participants, actually. So it's not only for you to be heard here, but it's important that colleagues online can hear you.
Thank you very much. 2 questions, one tactical and one strategic. On the tactical level and related to data or ownership in general, what about IP? What happened with the TI and the startup developing things and going through the pilot testing, developing and so forth? Some IP might be developed. Who owns what? And believe me, if that's not clear, same as access to data, is a killer for any of these initiatives. And on the longer term, on a more strategic side, could you give us some examples of what are some of the strategic gaps you have identified and where these programs are going to be focusing on? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So maybe, really, as you work on the infrastructure, the first question, you're maybe the best address on who owns what in all this collaboration.
Yes, for us, the customer. Our customer owns their own IP, so we don't own anything, and of course, but then we're always challenging also our customers. You know, what can they share? But of course, it's their own decision to share. But of course, if they share, very often, you know, sharing of results speed up others, and you know, the whole industry develops faster. So typically they always, or most of our customers accept to share something, but of course what's really core to them, what's really, you know, their core intellectual property, they will of course keep for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Claire, would you like to contribute?
I think the public-private partnerships are a perfect example of a good structure that finds a middle ground. These are pre-competitive, they are large, they are not bilateral, they are not product-focused, and so you get much more sharing there. So the industry as a whole is able to accelerate, but especially when you're doing something on a bilateral level, that's much more specific to the client.
Matthias, you want to come in on that?
Just also on this, because of course working public-private partnership, or as universities have, many universities for many decades, engaging with commercial partners, industries, or small businesses, or all of these different type of areas. These are tricky questions when it comes to access, when it comes to who pays for what, who owns what and when, but we should not pretend we're starting from scratch here. there is excellent experience, many decades of experience of people who've been doing this and have figured out very good ways to work with very different partners. So my strong encouragement is let's learn from the forerunners. Let's learn from the people who have been engaging in developing this. And there are solutions out there. It's not always immediately obvious, but there are solutions that do exist.
Okay, thank you. On the gaps, the expert group actually, when we did the analysis of user needs, we also had companies from a number of different sectors or technology areas. And there, in some areas, there was a clear message that there are gaps in technology infrastructures, that not enough technology infrastructures actually exist and are available to the companies in order to fulfill their needs in terms of their plans for new investments in the technologies. And a lot of that was in clean and renewable energy technologies, for example, in hydrogen, carbon capture and storage. There were things around photonics and semiconductors as well, so defense and aviation. These are some of the examples, but I do invite you actually to have a look at the report. You have quite a comprehensive overview of the answers that we got from companies, but obviously in some areas we will also want to investigate that further to better understand the gaps. Any more interventions from the room? Questions, comments? No, then I would like to maybe take something also from the Slido still, no, it's not easy because it's a moving target. But I will take the last one there. Should actually when we look at RIs and TIs and when we look at funding for upgrades and setting up new facilities, should these conditions be the same? Should they be different? How do you see that? And maybe here, and you choose what you want to react to. And here also we have a question about prioritization that will be a key to avoid what is happening in RIs with the RI roadmap being rather saturated. What do you think should be the approach for TIs? So please.
Well, if I just jump in, well, I keep banging on the same drum over here. But the last question here: what if a situation if a TI is an RI as well, which was the example that I brought in previously, where you have clean room facility or nanotechnology facility or so, where there is PhD students in the morning and industry in the afternoon. If you approach this from an outcome or purpose-driven approach, you solve this issue, because then it's not about the machine or equipment or the physical thing, it's about why and how do you use it. And I understand, again, there might be different access modalities, funding streams, ownership conditions or so that are needed depending on how you want to use it, the purpose or the outcome intended, but you can have the same physical thing and approach it from different directions depending on what you want to do with it. So that's... Yeah.
That points to the holistic approach to the whole ecosystem. Billy?
Yeah, I think it's a question about capacity and also geography. So sometimes you need more capacity and you need to duplicate things around, and you need more presence in different areas. But then again, we also have very special things that maybe it's enough with 1 or 2 places in Europe to have. So like one of our infrastructure is a floating offshore windmill that is floating 10 kilometers offshore, and it's one of the places it blows the most in the world. Of course, it is hard to make many of those, but at least now there is one, and of course that can be utilized from companies throughout Europe.
Thank you. Claire, any final words?
Yeah, I think that different regions in Europe need to play to their strengths. So it's not about, I've been in the business for a pretty long time now. So many people come and go, yeah, we're going to be the new Boston, Massachusetts. Like, no, you are not going to be the new Boston, Massachusetts. You're going to be the strength that you have regionally and that you're going to build up on. So it's that it's reflecting that rather than having a disconnect between what your journey is. But also, I think the big question we need to ask is, will this make a difference? If you have 100 little things that make no difference, then you better off having one thing that makes a really big difference. Because Europe's very good at having lots of little things that don't necessarily move the needle, shall we say. But so let's look at, in the strategy, what makes the difference.
Think big and focus on the difference. Very good. Many thanks. Thank you very much. Now, before we finish, exactly, that's perfect timing. Indeed, I wanted to have a look at the ranking of recommendations. So according to all of you, we don't have too many replies, so feel free to still click on the QR code. It was probably a little bit too short. Establish the funding programs comes on top. Not a very big surprise, I would say. Develop an effective investment prioritization mechanism, prioritize investments again. Improve access, and then formalize the definition and establish at EU level a robust governance framework in that order. And this may still be changing a little bit when you keep on voting, but I think it's also a good illustration. Okay, now to finish that panel off, I would like to still give 1 minute and a half to each of the colleagues who presented in the beginning. So, I mean, you can stay, you can go. We're not going to reorganize the scene again, so no problem. Stay over, I will take the mic. And then, starting by recommendation, if my memory doesn't fail me, Ricardo, any final words, what you would like to share, what you take from that?
I think what we were asked to do was to comment on the comments.
You can comment on something else as well.
I think the comments were fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think what it was really good. I particularly liked the. I would have, if I have to emphasize two things, I would emphasize, how can I not emphasize ecosystems and connections? I mean, that's the thing. Infrastructures, whatever they are called, they provide a service and an activity, and they have to be organized and connected correctly to other infrastructures, to the industry, and build functional ecosystems. That would probably what I would emphasize the most.
Thank you, Ricardo. Juliette?
Thank you very much. I think it was great to hear that people read the report very carefully. That was really nice for all of us. Yeah, exactly. Maybe I just want to pick up one thing that I saw in the question that wasn't there on access question. There was a question about SMEs versus a large company. I don't think that was too detailed in the panel, but I think this is one of the issues we have also, maybe it's not an issue, maybe it's a strength, but in Europe, but country by country, we have a very different industrial landscape, and obviously this has to be reflected also in the way we think this ecosystem and the access. So I think it's very important that, we already know that it's different to deal with an SME or a startup or a scale-up or large companies, but I think we have RTOs operating technology infrastructure for the last 100 years and so on. And so we know how to do this kind of stuff. We can benchmark, we can help each other. So I think that's my, it's not a takeaway. It's just an extra remark on some of the questions. Thank you.
Many thanks, Juliette. Andrea.
Yes, thank you. Actually, also thank you to you for reading the report and liking it. That's good. At the very first panel, the high-level panel, there was a lot of call for speed. And I just realized that actually we have conflicting aims in my point of view, because if we want to be effective, we also said that we need to focus on some areas. So if we want to be quick and speedy, but on the other hand want to have a good prioritization mechanism, we should also think properly about the criteria and how to put in place this prioritization mechanism. And it's also can be seen by some of the questions that were raised. How can we avoid the research infrastructure saturation of the landscape? So I think we should really keep in mind that speed is important, but also be effective with the scarce investments that are maybe on the table or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Hopefully they are not scarce and hopefully they are on the table. Marie.
So I will speak maybe about the recommendation 4 that I presented. So yes, we call for a well-coordinated European governance. So we all agree about that we really need to work at the EU level to tackle this fragmented ecosystem. But I'm wondering also how the national and regional authorities can also be involved in this governance, because I think it's essential for pooling resources, funding, and so yes, I think that yes, further than involving industry, we should also, I think, reach this national and regional also authorities.
Yeah, thanks. And now this is important indeed because the multi-level governance and the ecosystem within which technology infrastructures often operate actually necessitates also the engagement of local authorities where a lot of these activities are happening. Thanks for that. And Mirka?
Thank you. I just admire Claire and Willy that you said it very well that we need to understand the industrial need, we need to understand the industrial processes. And it's not only about the skills that we can learn in different ways, it's also about the experience and perspective and also the timeline and understanding that sometimes the things that we are doing are very risky and we need to also adapt to that. But really, thank you for reading the report, and I think that we all learned quite a lot during this process, during this expert group, but definitely discussing with the stakeholders and especially with the industrial users who really can take those results and innovations forward, uptake to the market, but more importantly, to create new jobs and growth and wealth for Europe. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mirka. Well, we managed to encourage a few more of you to vote on the recommendations. I think that, again, the order has not changed much. For me, the most important thing is that there are green bars for everyone, every recommendation. So it is at least none of them is at least unimportant. Many thanks, big round of applause also for our experts and also for our panel. And now we move over to the next part of our program, which is the second round of testimonials. And I have the pleasure to first invite Esther Hurtus, a European R&I policies expert at Eurecat, to share the experience from Barcelona. You can use this or this, depending what you prefer.
No, it's fine like this. And how can I move?
You need that, and normally it should work. It doesn't agree with me, but it should agree with you.
It works. Okay. Hello, good afternoon. It's a pleasure being here today. I'm Esther Hurtos from Eurecat, an RTO from Barcelona, the second largest RTO in Spain. And we host a few technology infrastructures. And I have already presented a few of them in previous workshops. And today I want to focus on the COS infrastructure, which is a part of our biotech area at Eurecat. So, let me see. Yes, okay. And this technology infrastructure, COS, it's the acronym that stands for the Center of Omics Sciences. It is a joint initiative of Eurecat and the University of Rovira and Virgili in Tarragona. And it is a large infrastructure that enables research and innovation in the field of genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, and bioinformatics. And the collaboration story I want to present today is with Grifols company on the characterization of albumin oxidation status for Alzheimer's disease patients. Grifols is a multinational pharma company based in Barcelona and leader in plasma-derived medicines. And we have, so to say, a long-term relationship with this company, in which for each given project or service, we establish a joint team with staff from the company and Eurecat. And for this specific case, for instance, there were very frequent meetings and an annual activity planning of the activities to be performed. And they came to us back in 2017, and they came after trying to collaborate with the Public Research Center that, despite having in this case, the right equipment, they did not offer enough agility and adaptability for their needs. That was the case at the time. And Grifols was performing a clinical trial called AMBER, in which they wanted to assess the therapeutic plasma exchange using an albumin-enriched solution to check whether it had a positive effect on these Alzheimer's disease patients in slowing the disease progression and decline. And their need at this point was that despite the clinical trial showed good results, the mechanism of action underlying this positive effect was not clear. And this is why they asked to perform a characterization using mass spectroscopy. This is quite a standard method that can be found in many different labs. But the added value of the collaboration in this specific case was the development of the experimental method to generate the data. A lot of effort and time of this joint team was invested in designing how will the tests will be done. And the second added value of this collaboration was in the data analysis methodologies to extract the desired knowledge that was under research. And in addition, the company requested in-house training for their staff, for instance, 2 days training, so that their staff knew how to use the infrastructure and to design their research considering the potential of using the technology infrastructure. And as a result of this collaboration, the specific scientific outcomes were the identification of variants with enhanced antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, and the evaluation of the protein stability under different conditions. The thing is that thanks to this collaboration, what was already proven that was therapeutically efficient could be fine-tuned and optimized after understanding the underlying mechanism. And the impact is the launch of the AMBER clinical program and the AMBER Center, where this new Alzheimer's therapy is being delivered, and that has this positive effect of slowing the disease progression. And for instance, this therapy is provided in the Catalan region at the Catalan Association of Alzheimer, but also in other places of Europe. And to conclude, I would, it is a very specific case of collaboration with a large industry in the pharma sector. And I would highlight the importance of the long-term relationship, because the knowledge generated in this study, for them, it can be applied to the treatment of other diseases with the same underlying mechanisms. And the setting up of this joint research team with the company and the TI staff, and the possibility of training the industrial staff to exploit the potential of using the TI. And that's it for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. I think this was a really nice example, as you said, of collaboration with a big company, but also of coming from knowledge generation to then the application at industrial scale and then being able to reuse that knowledge for other purposes. So many thanks for sharing this. Now I would like to invite G.G. Pragash, responsible for collaborative research at CETIM. Please also share welcome on stage, and you have the clicker here. I will take the pen so it doesn't disturb you, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for inviting CETIM to share their experience in technical infrastructures. I am G.G. Pragash from CETIM. CETIM stands for Technical Center for Mechanical Industries in France. We are dealing with all the technologies related to material and process. And in this presentation, I will present you one of our platforms on the process additive manufacturing related with metal manufacturing parts. When you take the France, you have already an ecosystem of additive manufacturing stakeholders existing, and CETIM itself has also several platforms with additive manufacturing machines. We are supporting the industrial players in metal additive manufacturing sectors to integrate these technology. Now I will present you clearly the technology infrastructure we developed around that. That's called printing bourse. In 2021, there is a clear need which was raised by the defense industry in the center region of France, where we have several OEMs like MBDA, Nexter, now it's KNDS, and others. These OEMs have already integrated their additive manufacturing in their roadmaps, industrial roadmaps, but they wanted to push all the supply chain manufacturers who manufacture parts to these OEMs to use also this technology. But due to the lack of visibility and the volumes of parts which will be subcontracted, so the supply chain was still waiting on how to deal with the integration of these technologies. So both OEMs and supply chain companies came together and decided to launch a collaborative platform on additive manufacturing dedicated to different stakeholders. You can ask why there's already a lot of platforms and ecosystem additive manufacturing in France, why creating printing bourse separately. That was really due to the sector itself, the defense sector. As you know, the confidentiality issue was very, very strong, and also the sovereignty, the European sovereignty of equipments used was also very, very strong in this context. They do not want to manufacture missiles or other arms-related parts using Chinese machines or any material coming from outside Europe. So we had to create a separate platform with respecting all these issues. So the machines that you see are the machines that we have in that platform. Very quickly, the governance of this printing bourse. You can see that all the actors are in the middle, coordinated by CETIM, MBDA, and KNDS. All the OEMs are there, and with them, there are 45 industrial members who are in the supply chain of the defense industry, and most of them are SMEs. Second group of actors are scientific community, where you see there are some universities, etc., with which we work to launch some thesis, some other scientific cooperation with this group. And on the other side, you have the financing organizations which support the sector, the defense sector, for keeping employment and industrial sovereignty in the France center region. So those are the actors. What kind of activities are generated in this platform? There are some private projects between one OEM and one or two of their supply chain industrials, or we can have a collaborative project with several involvement of several members. We have also a commercial team which can sell some private commercial services based on this platform to the outside of the membership. All these members pay a kind of monthly membership to use the machine for a certain time every month. Of course, when you pay more, you get more days, more hours of a slot of using the machine. How all the system is managed, we have an executive committee, it's called COMEX, where all the decisions are taken to integrate new members, to buy new machines, new peripheral equipments, etc. And the voting decision, of course, is completely proportional to the financial contribution of each member. And we have a steering committee, which deals in managing these private projects, collaborative projects, and all the private services that we can provide. We have also a liaison committee with all the funding agencies, where we report very frequently on what's happening in the platform and how we use their fundings. So very quickly, some figures. That was launched in 2023. After 2 years, we have processed more than 140 projects. 58 projects have already been delivered, and the 35 projects are running currently. Just an indicator, the machine utilization rate is around 75%, so it's really in use with all the members. You can see the variety of topics that are addressed in the projects. I think that we relate a lot with the feasibility studies, proof of concept, and the first series of manufacturing products, etc. I think that we have seen all those activities in the definitions of TIs presented recently. Just one point, in fact, this Printing Bourge platform is the 7th shared technology infrastructure that CETIM has launched since in 2007. And we have also managed to improve our organization during these 15 years. The first one was made for dental, for the dental prosthesis manufacturing companies. Then we made some other implants, etc., up until the Printing Bourge. Initially, we had one machine. We had one machine with several end users and CETIM coordinating that. Then we moved with some research partners. Then now we have several machines with some OEMs and their supply chain manufacturers, research organizations, and also machine manufacturers who are also interested to sharing their knowledge and having feedback from all those users to improve their process. So this experience is only on additive manufacturing, but we are doing this kind of shared equipments since 90s on the high-speed machining, and now we're also doing on some robots, etc., that we can, mobile robots that we can share and implement in a company for a certain period and get it back. So those are some of our experiences in TIs, and of course we are completely for having a specific program and activities around that.
Thank you very much, G. This was, I think, really interesting. An example of a TI for the defense industry. Adam Piotrowski earlier on mentioned the increasing interest in TIs also for dual use. So an industry where boosting our strategic autonomy is really important in a critical sector. But I think the model is also really interesting, working with shared infrastructure, shared equipment, and also with membership fee against kind of the right of access. That's also, I think, important for us to remember when we think about models. I would like to invite now the final testimonial that we have today and then in this conference, Yves Perignon, Scientific and Technical Director, Fondation OpenSea. Please, the floor is yours. And there you are.
Thanks a lot. I would like to first thank you for this invitation and opportunity to share with you this testimony in front of your audience. And also, so I'm representing the French RTO Fondation OpenSea, which is actually the national test center for offshore renewable energies. That's a young entity, 2 years of age, but it has inherited from the knowledge of more than 10 years of skills, know-how, model of activity and infrastructures. So what are we? A test center with test beds all across France and all across sea fronts, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Channel Sea. What do we do? So we host a demonstration of technologies from full-scale connected projects, meaning that we connect prototypes to the grid to enable full-scale demonstration of technologies. But we do also off-grid projects for small-scale, let's say 1 to 15th scale prototypes on a nursery site. We call that nursery site. We host those small-scale demonstrations which don't need to be connected to the grid. And also we host technology components. But we also host non-technological projects related to the knowledge of the environment, meaning the biological environment, the physical environment, but also all the stakeholder environmental context, fishermen and legal authorities and so on. And also we monitor the interaction of this environment with the technologies. So in terms of practical feedback, I would like to take advantage of one of the projects we are still hosting, the FlowGen demonstration. It's starting from our point of view, it's starting from a technology infrastructure, the SEMREF test site located in front of Le Croisic in France on the Atlantic seafront. It takes advantage of a pre-authorized usage of a public maritime area. With a grid connection. And this infrastructure as itself, it was a result of nearly 25 million of public investment, which was initiated at the time by a technology university, École Centrale de Nantes. This infrastructure meets an industrial need and a partner, Ideal. At the time it was a startup. During the first year of the project, it was a startup willing to demonstrate an innovation. The innovation was the floating prototype, a floating wind prototype, their barge actually. And they were willing to demonstrate that through a full-scale demonstration with a 2 megawatt turbines. Just a few words about the funding scheme. The initial project started thanks to FP7 project at the time, and it was set at sea in 2018. The first electricity was injected on the grid in September 2018. The demonstration is still running, and it has been covered with mainly with a private partnership. So the contractual basis is a private partnership agreement, which is ruling the demonstration on the test site. Beside this core industrial project, we are hosting numerous couple R&D projects on the environmental impact on several industrial components. And for now, all those projects are funded on public grants. In terms of IP management, so the strategy for the infrastructure was not to impair the IP of the industrial partner. So we don't touch this IP. What we touch or what we want to get in terms of IP is the interaction with the environment, for which we play a significant role as a third party in front of the public interest. And now some challenges. The future of such a project is higher capacity installed at sea. The first commercial floating wind turbine farms are selling wind turbines, single wind turbine of about 15 to 20 megawatt capacity. But at the time, there is no existing test bed in Europe or anywhere in the world for such testing. It means that the first farms will test with several replication of the devices, their technology. So to answer this need, there is already a design study undergoing in France on those aspects. So if you want to bring at sea a structure at the scale of the Eiffel Tower, and maybe want to test it at a certain point. And so we are investigating how to build such a high-power test site and where. But also the diagnosis is shared at the European scale with several European partners already running test sites and having all of them hosted floating wind turbines. So 2 Spanish test sites, 1 Portuguese and 1 Norwegian, for which there is a representative in the room. Arne, if you want to raise your hand. So we share this diagnosis about the lack and gap of capacity in terms of test beds for the future of this industry. And we have launched a request for a grant allowing to provide a design study at the European scale on the Atlantic seafront. But it remains a challenge to build such a European capacity from our point of view. And also we face some challenge with linkage with an S3, or the linkage between technology infrastructure and research infrastructure. So we are part of research infrastructure construction, gathering wave tanks and also test sites. That's part of the same area. But so we are currently involved in this S3 initiative, which is under construction. But the question that is raised today is crucial for our future, we guess. Thanks a lot.
Yves, many thanks for sharing this. Coming from the smaller scale, needing to upscale for testing size and for demonstration, and the challenges linked to that, and how to build up a European capacity and join forces to do just this. So many thanks. I think these testimonials were really, really interesting. Allowed us to a little bit look into the practical matters. Now let's come back to another plenary session. We will speak about mobilizing investments in technology infrastructure. So the top of the recommendation, which was about funding, so there you are, you ask for it. We will speak about money. Rafał Łukasiewicz, the director at Łukasiewicz Research Network. Please, you take over the floor from me and manage the session.
Thank you very much. I can imagine that you are pretty much tired, but I think we are going to one of the key point, I mean money. Yeah, so this is something that I think keep people awake. And let me start briefly because we are running out of time. So I will shorten my part, but I can definitively say, as you know, we already heard today about many reports, like we know about Letta report, Draghi report, Hetto report. We all know what are the goal of, what are the purpose, what all these reports are saying, and of course some of them are driving our attention to the fact that we have to increase the investment in R&D, but basically what we can do is we have to do this together with the industry, and technological infrastructure is one of the main tools to do so. So just going straight forward to what is in front of us, I will ask our panelists first, before I will give, start our panelists to join me to the stage, and then I will give a floor to Sophie, who will introduce to one of the documents that our European Commission presented. So I would like to first invite, of course, Maria Cristina Russo is with us online, I believe. Can you confirm it? No? Okay. So we have Stefan Mengo, he is the head of Unit for Electronics and Aeronautics Driving Supercomputing, Federal Ministry of Education and Research, Germany. Please come to the stage. Please take your seat. I would like also to call Brendan McDonald, Senior Advisor, European Investment Bank. Thank you very much. Ulla Gro-Nielsen, Scientific Director, Novo Nordisk Foundation from Denmark. Ulla. And one more, Antonio Blondini, the President of Italian Association, not Italian Association, Italian Association Aerospace Research Association, and Tiina Nakari-Setala, Vice President for Industrial Biotechnology and Food, VTT, Finland. Okay, but before I will give the floor to our speakers, our panelists, I would like to invite also Sophie Visido, who is from Technopolis, and she will give us a short introduction to the report that European Commission published recently on the policy landscape supporting technology infrastructure in Europe. So please come, and the floor is yours. Here I think you have a presentation.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present the follow-up, actually, of this study on the policy landscape for technology infrastructures, which has been published earlier this year, last year, actually. I will present today a brand new study that we are conducting for the EIB on the funding needs for technology infrastructures. And I will just give you some highlights on the key findings from this study, which some of you have actually contributed to. So the main objective of this study was really to assess the needs for investment in technology infrastructures in Europe by 2030. And the outcome of our analysis and large-scale survey of TI operators is that there is a funding needs for CapEx investment in technology infrastructure of a minimum of 13 to 16 billion by 2030, which constitute an increase of 200% compared to the current levels of investment in capital expenditure for technology infrastructure currently in Europe. So that's quite important, and I think that resonates very well with the discussion of this afternoon. And if we look a little bit into the details, here you have the type of technology areas that are actually requiring this type of investment, and you have in the dark blue bars here in this graph the growth rates of the expected or projected needs for investments across the different technology areas. So you see artificial intelligence and quantum technologies quite high. Here with very high growth rates of investment needs. You have also avionics technologies and space technologies, but also I think defense, so we talked about dual use today already, and as well robotics, which were the areas with the highest growth rate. And you see in the light blue bars, these are the levels of expected investments, and with microelectronics on top, with 1.9 billion investment needs on average, and then clean energy generation and storage, circular economy and materials, hydrogen technologies, and AI and biotech, and I will cite as well robotics as the top one with more than 1 billion investment needs in these areas. When we look at the sources, the current sources of funding for capital investment into TIs, here you have what we have found through this study. So the main source of funding is really grants, block funding for research organizations and technical universities, mainly the TI operators, and as well reserves from these organizations. And you see here in this chart that the private funding and financial instruments for capital investment in infrastructure are rarely used currently in Europe. And in terms of geography, this origin of public funding for CapEx, it's mainly from regional sources by 47% on national sources, and to a limited extent at EU level, which has actually risen in the last years with new instruments at EU levels, for example, through the CHIPS Fund, or OITBs, or TEFs, for example, funding. In terms of the demand side, this remains a key challenge. I think this has been highlighted quite several times today, also on how to secure long-term sustainability of the funding, how to secure upgrade, and this long-term sustainability through the demand side. Here you have in this graph the sources of operational investments from these infrastructures, and you see that it's relying mainly on public competitive funding through using TIs through national competitive programs and EU programs, for example. private funding for a third, more or less, of the OPEX, or covering the cost of using these infrastructures. But as well, the public-based funding of the RTOs and the technical universities, and as well the internal reserves of the TI operators are also used to support the operational costs of these infrastructures. And there you see in terms of origin of funding is quite balanced between regional, national, and EU level, and that also shows the importance of these multi-level synergies between these different sources. And you see here we have also noted the main element of how to build a business case for TI investments through these TI operators, so how to ensure the viability and the prioritization of investments. And we will dive deeper into this during our sessions tomorrow, but that includes, of course, assessing the market demand, the expected revenue generation from these infrastructures, the type of collaboration models, the forecasted utilization rates as well of these infrastructures, the uniqueness of the value proposition, and the different available funding stream and alignment with policy priorities. So these are important elements on how to actually improve the business cases of these infrastructures. And here you see in this graph the type of users, basically across different sectors, and you also see that these technology infrastructures actually address the needs of a wide range of industrial sectors. That includes, of course, mobility, transport, but also energy, renewable, energy-intensive industry, electronics, healthcare, construction, aviation, aerospace and defense, and digital and ICT mainly, but also other types of sectors that include as well agri-food, the public sectors, down to textile and retail, which can in some instances also be important users of some types of infrastructures. So that's really also an important element to take into account, and there are many infrastructures that are actually diversifying and expanding their outreach to additional sectors, which is an important element of cross-fertilization use of these infrastructures. And now, just also to open this panel discussion, an important element of this study is also to yield from this expected 200% increase in TI investment needs by 2030, and this discussion on how to expand the pool of funding available for technology infrastructures, which can be done through, of course, expanding the grants portfolio available at different levels, EU, national, regional, but also through leveraging the potential of financial instruments in some cases when these are adapted to the needs of TIs. There are a few challenges to address in terms of course, the general financial standing of TI operators, the cultural factors, some risk aversion to use this type of instruments, the cash flow generation, which is also an important element for the viability of this type of use of financial instruments. And there, despite these challenges, we have found in this study quite a few examples of use of financial instruments that are currently supporting TIs across Europe in some specific cases through bank loans for specific TIs in specific cases, through also leveraging energy infrastructures that are directly linked to the TIs, because the energy cost is quite an important element in the cost structure of infrastructures, and as well sometimes commercial bank credit line at the level of the TI operators that can also be used in some cases to finance the capital expenditures. So these are just food for thought that we will also dig deeper into all these topics tomorrow during our study validation workshops, which we all encourage all of you to join, where we will dig deeper into this business case of TIs to secure long-term funding of TI technology infrastructures, but also on the second session on how to design these different instruments that could enable to expand the scope of available funding for technology infrastructures by 2030 and reach this 200% growth rate needs of investments in infrastructures. But I'm sure this panel will also enlighten us before our session tomorrow, to which you're most welcome to join and ask any question on the study that you might have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to the panel, I think we have a Slido. Yes. So I would like to ask you to answer this question during today's discussion, during this panel. So please scan the QR code, and then during discussion you will see how we can proceed with this. So the question is, which funding source should be used more for TI investment in future? Oh, sorry. So okay, so we have already some first answers, but before, let's go back to our panelists and let's start with some introductory intervention. So I'd like to start from Stefan. Could you say a few words about how do you see the investment, how to support investment in TIs from national perspective?
Well, yeah, thank you very much. It's what I'm going to say is not that much about private funding, to be honest. So I'm going to say something about public funding, but of course, for relevant technologies where Europe is in severe competition around the globe. One example I'm bringing to the discussion is the European Chips Act and its pilot lines, where the EU, together with the member states, are heavily investing in pilot lines. And the idea of these pilot lines is to create knowledge in technology which is not already there in Europe. So it depends on what you want. Of course, this technology should, in a later stage, pick up private funding, and the money should be earned back in a way. But nevertheless, this is about filling gaps in the technologies already in Europe and increasing digital autonomy or technology sovereignty. So that's one example. Another example is the supercomputers in Europe, the Euro HPC computer fleet, which is primarily designed for scientific needs, but it's now going to be opened up for private users. And this is under the headline of AI gigafactories, as you know all about. And the idea behind this is to mobilize private investment by pooling the demand originating from R&D, from pre-commercial R&D, together with the commercial interest from private actors, from companies, from corporates. Whether this is going to work, the jury is still out on it. That's an open question. But it's where we have some indication that it will work to mobilize private investment by pooling public demand and pooling private demand and putting it together to purchase really large machines, computer machines.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good point, because actually, yeah, we have to start from somewhere, yeah? And let's see how the things will go. Yeah. Okay, I'm happy that we have with us Maria Cristina Russo. I'm very happy that you managed to join us. So could you give us a little bit information about the current situation in EU funding for technological infrastructure? Maria, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, good afternoon. Nice to see you online again. There has been a bit of an hiccup for the fact that the discussion beforehand took a bit more time, and I was online before and not when I was called. But no matter. I mean, you already heard me this morning, earlier today, in this roundtable, in this high-level roundtable, and I think I was very clear in passing the message that for technology infrastructures, there is a lot that needs to be done, because nothing really has been done at EU level so far, and the situation at the member states level is not ideal either. So we don't have a strategy, we don't have criteria for designing the technology infrastructures. We don't have a mapping, and we don't have funds for them. We had some limited examples, although they are big, and I was hearing the previous speaker speaking about the gigafactories, for which, as the president announced in Paris 3 months ago, we will mobilize 20 billion of euros. We have supported the HPC, high-performing computer, at the level of the European Union. We have been able to mobilize open innovation test beds, for example, for validating novel and advanced materials. But I mean, really a structured action on funding technology infrastructures that not exist for the reasons that I highlighted earlier on and repeated now. So what we need to do, it is obvious. We need to set up criteria which would define which are the technology infrastructures at EU level. Those criteria need to be developed with stakeholders, with the relevant stakeholders and the member states, and we intend to make a first move forwards towards that in the strategy that we intend to propose. Then we need to mobilize funding for the technology infrastructures at three levels. First of all, from the EU. And there, no secret that we will have the proposals for the next MFF, the multi-annual financial framework, which is scheduled by mid-July. And there also one of the interesting elements of having a strategy is that we should influence as much as possible the next MFF, and especially the funds devoted to research, in order to support also technology infrastructures. Then obviously we need to mobilize funds with the member states. The idea to define criteria and roadmaps with member states is important, because we should also be able to have national funds that concur to support technology infrastructures. And for that, as we mentioned also earlier on, we are far away from reaching the famous 3% of the GDP that should be devoted to research and innovation. And part of these 3% that we hope the member states will mobilize should obviously, for us, be supporting technology infrastructures based on the criteria and the roadmap that we would define. And then last but not least, the private sectors and the sector and the financial institutions. I was very glad to hear earlier on my good friend Merete Clausen from the EIB saying that they would be ready to finance the technology infrastructures. And I would conclude by saying that technology infrastructures, being also with the participation of private stakeholders and being working for the interest also of the private sector, should be always obviously completed by financing coming from the private sector. We spoke a lot about an ecosystem earlier on. There was this intervention by the Dutch colleague that focused also on what is happening on the Brainport region, where we have ASML, where you have the technology, the Eindhoven Technology University, and which has a clean room. ASML has its technology infrastructures, and here it's a very good example that I see of an ecosystem that gathers private funding, national funding from member states, and also EU funding with the participation, for example, of the Eindhoven University to the different framework programs of research, for which now we don't have an envelope on technology infrastructures, but we aim to have it included. So these are the thoughts that I wanted to leave to you. Due to the changing of timing, I will not be able to participate to the rest of the discussion, but I hope that these elements could inspire also the next exchanges, and wishing you a very good continuation of the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria Cristina. I think you spotted very correctly the main three sources of funding: European, national, and of course private investment. So thank you very much for this, and all the best for you. And maybe having in mind what Cristina said, and also what we have seen from the report from Technalia, how do you see, Brendan, how the EIB can support the TI development in terms of investment? How you see this?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to speak. And just to reinforce what Maria Cristina said, I mean, the EIB is an EU institution on the one hand, but we're also a bank on the other hand. So I suppose I speak in the context of a bank in the sense that when we say lending, we have to get it back in some way, whereas from the grant side, it's quite different. So that puts a different complexity and a different challenge for us in engaging with the TI infrastructure. Right now, the way we work in terms of funding is we would have two pillars. One is through a direct method to TI infrastructure areas, or two is the indirect method through financial intermediaries, and then there's a separate way to the demand side. So for TI operators right now, we mainly see that the scale of activity that is being proposed comes to us as part of a wider university or an RTO infrastructure investment program. And that's how we are funding some of them at the moment. We would be happy to work with them on an individual basis, but that needs a certain level of scale and also a governance and a legal structure behind it. Because as I said, being a bank, it's a bit different than working with a grant body. In the intermediary world, we obviously, as my colleague Maretta said earlier, we fund through the fund structure. And there we can actually make a big difference in that we can help on the demand side. So the European Investment Bank structure right now can help the SME sector to grow and develop, which means they in turn have funds to actually come to the TI operators. Because this is the challenge on the one side that's often forgotten, is that the TI operator needs a customer. Like we hear a lot about customer demand every day, but that's for TI operators, they're SMEs. Many cases are often large companies. But they need to have the funds themselves. So we're trying to work on that side as well to expand that pool. I think it's an important point and an important junction to be looking at this, because obviously with the geopolitical situation, Europe really needs to work better together and work together across the borders. And that has been reinforced by a few speakers. So I think there's a greater need to be able and willing to look at that regulation and that environment across borders and see Europe as one entity rather than seeing it as a multiple group of countries with multiple challenges. And how we can do that and simplify that will be very important in terms of helping the TI infrastructure to grow. Because it's not about growing little ones everywhere. It's about growing numbers of scale that actually will drive the competitiveness of the EU. This is what we have to do. And going a short distance to get the right infrastructure is not a problem for an SME once it realizes the right infrastructure is there and it can get its product to market quicker and faster with good technology. If they're willing to do that, they have a challenge to find you. And on the other side, I would say maybe there's a challenge for you in finding them. We talk about bringing science to finance and finance to science. And by that I mean that the SME is looking for the finance to go and work with you. And on the other hand, the TI operators, many of you in the audience, are saying, how do we find these customers? But equally, how do we actually build a commercial business? And to do that, you need finance. And to take on the finance thought process in building a business case around a commercial business rather than building a business case that has too much funded by public grant money today. Inevitably, that's how it starts. And I think Europe has been driven so far along the journey with a lot of public money. But to make that big leap, we've got to drive the volume. And what you'll see tomorrow in some of the workshops is we're trying to propose ways of blending private money and public money together to, as I call it, grow the amount of food on the table. We don't want, as the EIB, to be eating somebody else's lunch in terms of taking loans from other banks. We want to grow the amount of finance in the sector. And that's through blending grant money with private money, with commercial bank money like ourselves, and growing the volume that's available. But that will need a commercial mindset and a focus. And I think that's the journey and the challenge that we all have to go on. The study that Sophie outlined is something we're trying to do to help educate, promote, and support the sector. The workshops tomorrow are an attempt to work with you. We're not coming with a finished product. You know, we're not going to take one out of the oven and say, this is done. We're still in the kitchen cooking, and you can add a few ingredients to that pie tomorrow in terms of shaping the recommendations we will put into this report, which we hope will help influence the thought process in the next MFF.
Thank you very much. You touched actually a very important aspect, yeah? Europe as one. Important that EIB sees technological infrastructure as important tool, and to find the proper mechanism between the private and public investment in boosting the TIs, yeah? But I'm also very happy that we have Ula with us. She is from the philanthropic institution Novo Nordisk, so I think it would be also very important to understand how do you see the TI and how do you support, and what in your perspective is TI and how we should involve from perspective of your institution.
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate here. So before, I think I should give an introduction to a philanthropic organization or foundation, because it's quite different from the investment bank. So the Novo Nordisk Foundation was established about 100 years ago, and it's based on insulin production, and the revenues from the Novo Nordisk or Nordisk Insulin Lab, as it was at that time, had to be given back to society. And we have, as a foundation, specific bylaws, so there are strict rules on what can we support and what can we not support. Go fast forward 100 years. So today, the strategy is to do activities that benefit society and the planet. So we have 3 pillars. One is within health science. One is within sustainability. There's a strong component of biotech and biosolutions. And then we also have fundamental research. And starting out, we were a classic research funding, philanthropic organization. We supported fundamental research. We have a research infrastructure program. This is my area of expertise. And so we fund smaller infrastructures on the order of 1 to 3 million. But in there, we actually have, among the user community, we encourage them to have SMEs. Because, this is a way to get access to infrastructure that they could not afford themselves. So that's sort of where we started out in the classic funding. But about 1/3 of what we give out, it's about 1.3 billion euros a year, is these classic research grants. The other 2/3 are strategic investments. Many of them are in research, but we have this really strong focus on translation. So when we do great science, it has to come out and have impact in society. And so technology infrastructures is actually one way to do this. We go all the way up to innovation. Once you spin out a company, we have a holdings company that can take over. And this is some of the rules that we are sort of bound by legislation. We can, similar that you have state aids, we can't support commercial interests, but we can work in collaboration. And I brought 3 recent examples of what we do in the technology infrastructure. So one is GFION. It's an AI supercomputer that launched in October. It's the 21st fastest supercomputer in the world. And it's a private-public partnership with us and then the Danish Export and Investment Fund. So we have both commercial and research users that have access to the same AI computer. So rather than having silos, we actually join forces. So that's one way that I can see how we'll contribute this continuum of research and technology infrastructures that is merging. So public-private partnerships. We have the Accelerator. Here it's a GMP facility for stem cell research that can go, we're building it. We don't have any customers yet. But again, it's going from research and all the way up to, clinical trials, commercial. That we've spun out as a limited liability company, so it's its own entity. And then the third example of ways that we can work with technology infrastructures is a project called SmartField, where we actually have a Danish RTO, the Danish Technological Institute, leading the project. And it's a small platform for nitrous oxide emissions from agriculture, just to give you sort of an example of how we work. So how can we support? We can go in, we're bound, we can't support commercial activities, but we can contribute to the ecosystem, educate, train the talent, translate research into commercial activities, all this close collaboration, so ensuring, like being partners with others, network. We also involve in like pre-competitive innovation platforms, for instance.
Thank you very much. I think it's very important that we could see the example of institutions like yours interested in supporting this kind of initiative. I hope that other similar institutions will follow the Novo Nordisk example, and we will have more investment in this kind of ideas, in this kind of approaches too. But going maybe now to Antonio, because I think, if I may say, I think it's a little bit different approach, because what we could see from the aerospace or aviation system, it's a bottom-up approach. So there was a big mobilizing, big movement at the institution, industry point of view, and then we created the roadmap. And how do you see how you can think this kind of the work that you did in the aerospace and aviation can be supported in terms of putting in practice that what you already did for so many years? How you can comment on that?
Well, each domain has its own peculiarity, of course. Yeah. So, specifically on infrastructure, if we speak of technology infrastructure in aviation, we think of capital-intensive infrastructure that need a high upfront amount of money and a high amount of money for their maintenance and for the activity that are needed to maintain them to the need that change through the years. And for this reason, of course, this kind of infrastructure till today are mainly driven first national needs, second by non-profit organization that allow private company to use this infrastructure for many needs. Of course, EREA, which I represent here, is the association of 15 main research establishments in Europe, and we have more or less 200 key and strategic infrastructure, meaning for them infrastructure whose replacement cost is more than 10 million euro. We, at the same time, most of us work also in the space domain and have other infrastructure dedicated to space. So you can understand how important it is for us to speak about infrastructure and to work on it. At the same time, I have to say that, for instance, one main infrastructures of our center are the wind tunnels. And we have wind tunnels that has more or less, it depends on the research center, but we can say 20 years old. For instance, I can speak of Icing Wind Tunnel that is in Italian Aerospace Research Center, that when it started, he has a computer platform on Windows NT. So you can imagine how difficult and how costly is the upgrade in terms of, for instance, digitalization. It's quite like a replacement cost. Yeah. We are, but from other side, we are in a better situation than what I've heard. I've heard Maria Cristina that said we don't have a lot of things about infrastructure. But on the opposite side, in aviation, we have had some attention on what are the needs of Europe. In the last quarter of last year has ended a pilot initiative on ARTI, on aviation research and technology infrastructure with DG RTD Unit C3 that I thank for the attention. And the result is that we have checked and selected the infrastructure that are needed for the future years. In aviation, it's difficult to say exactly research or technology infrastructure because our infrastructure goes from low TRL to the highest TRL possible. So it's this separation doesn't fit very well for us. Generally, it depends, but generally doesn't fit very well. But which are the need? In these documents, and we had before the Ringo research that has given us some important result. From our need, we have, first of all, it's something that is written in Draghi report, letter report, wherever, is to align the national policies, of course, and to avoid duplication of infrastructure. In this report, we have checked which are the infrastructure, both physical and digital, that are needed for the future needs of aviation. And so what to do is to go and start and raise money for that. And of course, I've seen the result of the request to the public and what has been spoken before about the importance of public-private engagement. But in this sector, we have to find the right way of the private engagement, because the cost is so high that and the infrastructure is built in a non-profit organization. Even in the expert report that has been examined before, we say that technology infrastructure are built normally in non-profit organization that are research center, research organization, university, whatever. And of course, a private company is reluctant to spend more money for an infrastructure that is not owned and where it's not possible to decide immediately to use for their own scope and so on. I've heard before in the defense sector a successful experiment, but it's not that easy every time. And we have also to solve some peculiarity of our complex legislation. For instance, we have the example, as soon as we are public research organization that build with the support of public fund infrastructure that are offered to private companies for many goals, we have some problems of legislation sometimes. For instance, I have an example of one area member that built an infrastructure under the EFRE, the European Regional Development Fund support, and from one side he could not ask for money for the use of the facility because the fund regulation don't let him do that. But on the other side, there was some issue on state aid because there was the use for free of this infrastructure. So there was some doubts of not be compliant with the state aid regulation. So this is one problem. Another problem is the different national bodies that are on our infrastructure, because in some states is industry ministry, defense ministry, research and university ministry. So not always the goals are the same. Operate, upgrade, and work on this infrastructure need a clear, coordinated view and a clear funding instrument that can, of course, have private on side from many point of view. Of course, private, for instance, in aviation and space sector, we have or big company or small medium enterprises. There is a very big distance between this extreme. And of course, you cannot ask a small medium enterprise to participate in financing of an infrastructure that costs 200 million euro, for instance, no? Or a big infrastructure. So it's something that need to be chosen within the European Union and financed with the right instrument.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, actually, you presented very clearly what are the main bottlenecks, especially in the area which is very intensive in terms of capex. So I think this is very important. But going maybe right now to VTT, Tina, could you tell us some examples how to make it working on the base of what you have in VTT?
Yeah, sure. How to successfully mobilize investments for technology infrastructures and what factors may affect the success. But before giving you any examples, maybe to those of you who may not be so familiar with VTT, so maybe a short general introduction so that you understand what kind of an organization we are and what limitations we might face. So VTT is a not-for-profit RTO. We have approximately 2,300 employees. Our legal status is limited liability company, but we are actually fully owned by the state of Finland. And we are located in 4 cities in different latitudes, so from the southern capital region to central and northern part of Finland. And this is actually crucial when it comes to the regional funds and the availability of regional funds in different parts of Finland. So we are also multidisciplinary and multi-technological, and we serve a great variety of different industries, different companies, startups, SME scale-ups, big companies, and not only within Finland but also outside in Europe, but actually in all continents of the world. So we are very international, and we are actually ranked number 15 among the 21,000 plus recipients of EU research funding. We have a big mission. So our mission is to promote deployment of research results and technology in business and society. So this makes us a key player in the innovation ecosystems nationally, but also across the Finnish borders. So we are committed to long-term R&D, and this means that we have capabilities and infrastructure to develop technologies from the laboratory scale and to mature then the technologies to higher technology readiness levels and also commercial readiness level in our pilot facilities, crossing the so-called valley of death. And oftentimes the research and technology infrastructures are actually located in same physical facilities. That is the case many times at VTTs. And then our business business partners and the customers, they use our state-of-the-art facilities for their own R&D operations, and thus they avoid a massive own initial investment. And then to the examples, to open up how VTT has successfully mobilized investments for technology infrastructures, I have two concrete cases in my mind. The other one is VTT Bioruukki and the other one is Printocent. And VTT Bioruukki is actually a member in the Pilots for EU network, so you may have noticed it already in one of the testimonials. And today, VTT Bioruukki is a leading open innovation pilot center for bio and circular economy in Europe. And it harbors three main platforms: thermochemical, biomass processing, and biomaterials, and then process chemistry platform, and it offers top-level piloting capacity for new bio-based chemicals, materials, energy carriers, and provides services from TRL 2 to 7 in these different platforms. Most of the time, we actually use this pilot center in our own research projects, but of course also in collaboration with SME startups and large companies through service agreements. The facility is actually located in Espoo in the capital region. It is established in a refurbished printing center, but it also has some new building extensions. And it was developed through several phases during 2010 to 2022. And there is currently a significant extension also planned. The initial investment was around 35 million euros, and that was raised through national government budget, through our own resources, and then through rental agreements. In addition, there has been funding from the Research Council of Finland, which is a national funding organization, through EU RDF and RFF funding. And altogether, the total investment will be close to 60 million euros. And of course, it takes a few million euros every year to operate the facility. The other example is the Printocent, and that's a joint effort of VTT, Oulu University, and City of Oulu, and this is in the northern part of Finland. And the vision of this center was to actually make the Oulu region a working leader in hybrid, flexible, printed electronics, and then to renew and the business in the region and replace declining electronics jobs in the region. And this center is actually, it started already in 1990s out of researchers' interests, and then got first support from national publicly funded research programs, and also from early 2000s onwards, also it received funding from EU framework programs. And towards the end of 2000s, 3 printed electronics pilot production lines were established, and with the idea to raise the technology readiness level of printed intelligence technologies. And after this was done, also industry was really getting interested, and there started to be increasing revenue streams from companies, and the Printocent industrial cluster, which now I think today harbors something like 40 companies. The Printocent facility also received recent investment funds that focus on piloting photonic-based medical devices, including, again, VTT's own funding, funding from national sources, but also from EU CHIPS GU pilot line. And so as you can sort of notice is that VTT is mostly pooling funding from different sources for these technology infrastructures, which are really costly to establish from the scratch, but also costly to upgrade and operate. So from our experience, it is really important to actually hook the investments to long-term R&D and also strong technology areas of the organization. And I think this was pointed out earlier today as well. And before then, sort of aligning the internal views and making the strategic decisions, it is extremely important to actually have discussions with industry. And this is what we have always been doing. To really ensure that they have the needs and then that they may also have some possible commitments for future use. So bringing in the companies in an early phase is important. I pointed out earlier that there are differences in different regions in the country. And for example, in the central part of the country, we have been extremely successful in combining the RDF funding, the regional funding, and also then the industrial funding for certain technology infrastructure refinements and upgrades. And then, of course, having the sort of the discussions with the national authorities is extremely important, and we have been able to raise funding from the government budget. And I have to say that we have been really lucky because I think our steering ministry really very well understands the importance of tech infra, so and how they can support growth.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is a very important point to find a good balance between the public at national, regional level, but also the private investment. I know that Stefan wants to intervene, but I would like to also ask you if you can answer in your intervention right now also, because as you, having in mind what Maria Cristina was saying about the new MFF, let's see how we can, if you can also try to answer the question, how we can design the most effective approach to shorten the pathway from decision to real investment. That's what Antonio was saying also, yes? If you can also reflect on that and think how we can, if we can propose such kind of mechanism. I know that it will be very different from different perspectives, but also the beauty of this discussion. So Stefan, maybe you want to take the first floor.
Well, yes, thank you. So to answer, I'm trying to answer your question first, or Maria's question first. So the joint undertakings which pool EU money with national money, public money, are quite effective in aligning the EU-level policies with the policies on national level, just via the transfer mechanism of money. Everything is financed bipartite, so if there is a specific infrastructure being established, it's 50% of the money is originating from the Union and the other part is from the member states where this infrastructure is going to be implemented. And that is quite an effective mechanism because every side thinks that it's going to leverage the other side, which is quite encouraging. So it's a good argument. So that's, in a way, in my point of view, quite effective. It works for the supercomputers, it works in microelectronics for the pilot lines. But I wouldn't go so far to say that this is a role model for every technology, because I think it's really important to capitalize or to take account of the specificities of a specific technology sector and a specific industrial a sector where it's targeted to. So that might be different in quantum, in AI, in photonics, in biotechnology, so we have to find a tailor-made approach. And that leads to what's outlined in the competitiveness compass, where certain acts are envisaged. Quantum Act, Materials Act, and others. I think these acts might be an opportunity to align various policy fields, such as R&D, regulation, foreign trade policy, standardization. So that's an opportunity in the deep tech sector at least, to align certain policies, but also to align EU-level policies with national policies. And I would go so far, it's a bit provocative to say, where there is an act, there should be a technology infrastructure.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Okay, I'm going to end my... maybe that's...
Okay, we will come back. Brendan, how do you see this from the EIB perspective? Because I think JU approach for some areas might be working quite well, but probably not all. How do you see it from EIB?
Well, from EIB side, in terms of financing the TI sector, I suppose one of the challenges of bringing in private finance is ownership. And right now, lots of the TIs are not separate standalone legal entities. So for us, and I'd say for many private investors, sorting an agreement to fund means working with an entity above who's actually controlling. So it's like, you know, in a family structure, you want to fund a sibling, but you have to go to the parent. And therefore, you're not sure whether the parent will actually comply and fund down into the right sibling you want to make sure the sibling does what you want them to do. Sorry for the analogy, but so I think establishing a standalone legal entity and the ownership structure that can give to TIs can help. Obviously, the RTO can remain a majority, but it can allow you to bring in private and also be easier for us maybe to work. I think that's one side to consider. And the other side is to go back to the point on mixing grants with the attraction and utilising them in a blended structure to create more funds, to put more money on the table for the TIs to actually work with. That rather than using the grant as a one-for-one, the grant through a blended instrument can multiply into 3, 4, 6, 10 euro for every one, depending on how it's structured. So for me, there's two pieces.
Okay, Ulla?
Yeah, continuing on the analogy. So when you know, the more partners you have, at least scales with the square of the number of partners, if not exponentially, the complexity. And all of this, you have to align different funding bodies. They all have their different, say, practices and regulations. Of course, they don't have the same deadline. And it's really like, how do you align? How do you time the funding from multiple sources? How do you get access? And I think we'll have to, you know, figure out, okay, what can't you bend or what do you have to follow? And also compromise and work in collaboration. So I think a good one would be to do like test examples and then develop like best practices. And also, you know, don't have an annual application round because they will never be aligned.
Okay, thank you. Antonio, I think you are the most experienced in terms of struggling with all the problems that you already address. How do you think that MFF can be more effective in terms of financing? Maybe you have a golden bullet that can solve all the problems.
Well, it's way complicated.
It's a good beginning.
Yeah, it's way complicated. But I think, first of all, is a question of choose and realize. From our point of view, in Duringo, that date 2020, necessity, infrastructure has been selected, has been shown that are needed for the next 20 or 30 years. So now it's time to realize there is a problem of timing. Second question is awareness. It should be, let me say, view with favor a solution like a one-stop shop service, where mostly small, medium enterprise can go and can know which are the research and technology infrastructure that they can use in all Europe. Because I've heard, of course, the advisor of investment bank that think of this kind of infrastructure owned by private companies. And I understand that from financing point of view is easier. From many point of view, we need more time, it's more complicated and so on. But is not casual that in the definition that the expert has done of technology infrastructure is normally owned by no-profit organization, because it's of course difficult when it's private to allow all companies to use this infrastructure. So it's of course is a matter of which is the best solution. There is no best solution, of course, but a mix of them. But this kind of infrastructure in aviation, also in space, that are very expensive, is better that are owned by RTO like us. Another solution can be vouchers. As soon as the use of this infrastructure from small, medium enterprise is too costly, because even if we debt only the cost that is needed for a test, for a validation, for whatever, sometimes cost is very high. We at CIRA have an infrastructure that for every use, only for cost is 50,000 euro for each use. So for small, medium enterprise is too costly, and a system of voucher could help small, medium enterprise to utilize the infrastructure. But I don't want to annoy, so...
Okay. Tina, do you think that we can find a good mechanism, propose a good mechanism for speeding up and make it more effective under the MMF?
Well, I have a very sort of short comment on the co-funding. And I think that it would require a lot more dialogue between the national funding organizations and the Commission, so that especially in those cases where the co-funding is sort of a prerequisite, so that it doesn't come as a surprise, and that there are sort of no ad hoc requests during the proposal preparation phase to the funding organizations. So more time and more sort of systematic approach. That would be my what I would like to advocate.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are quite late, so I will just give you 1 minute of intervention to trying to address how do you see the answers from our audience. Do you think, how do you reflect, how do you think it's a good spectrum of the ideas how we should mobilize the funding, whether it's the best approach? Maybe you can start with Tina and then we go one by one as a take-home message for this session.
So obviously a lot of opinions from the audience and lots of suggestions. I'll just pick one, and that is the loans. And there I would strongly support the idea that don't push loans for organizations that cannot cope with them.
Okay. Stefan?
Well, everybody's advocating pooling. Pooling is in certain cases adequate, but in some other cases it's not, because the EIB, commercial banks, the public side have different roles to play, and they should be not intermixed everywhere. So we need to be careful in advocating pooling everything pooling everything. So that's my main message. So the public side should support things which are not supported by market forces. And this is an important role to play. Otherwise, we end up in the middle technology trap. And this is the title of a report which was not mentioned today among all these. So there's a report calling that Europe is trapped in the middle technology trap, and that should be taken serious. Thanks.
Yeah, very good point.
Just to add maybe one comment on TIs, I would say also to value yourself and actually value the infrastructure and the cost environment that you have and look to get as much of that back. Because often I think there's a view in the mindset of the cost model that you're trying to minimize the actual charge, whereas you do a lot of good work, therefore you should be well paid for it, and I think industry can work with you. And for us, I think what was interesting was the three in green come up together, which is the three almost divergent views of private funding on the one side to European public on the other. So I think it shows that all is needed, to your point, Stefan, indeed. And there are different cycles and different times when different parts of either the public or the private funding system comes to help you in the journey. But there is an opportunity for Europe to grow this infrastructure, and we need to.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ulla, from your perspective?
From my perspective, as from a private foundation coming from the research side, is, you know, the research infrastructures are pushing more and more collaboration with industry, technology infrastructures. These two themes are gonna merge. And my recommendation would be to collaborate and not compete for funding.
Good point. And Antonio?
Well, it's interesting, the DG Comp Fund, that it's really interesting, but it's I don't want to induce on it, but I would say that the most important that I think I see in this world is coordination within EU, national and regional funding from one side. From the other side, if I can say, is not private funding, but private involvement should be a better perspective, at least for aviation and space sector, but I think in general, because it's true what you say that if a facility, if an infrastructure is needed by market has to pay it. But it depends if the market has the money, because it depends how the market is composed. So each sector is different. But a private involvement is essential, not to build a cathedral in the desert, but to build something that raise our competitiveness.
Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more with all of you. And if I may, I will probably take that more EU funding for TI CapEx, because I think it's important to differentiate the investment and maintenance of the infrastructure. But this is probably a topic for different discussions. So I would like to thank for all of you. I would please join me thanking for this interesting presentation, this discussion. And we can probably move to the last point, but for this I will give the floor to Dominic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear panelists. Thank you very much, Rafał. Round of applause also for Rafał for moderating the session. So we are getting very close to the program, to the end of the program today. But before we move to dinner, we still have an appetizer for you. We still have one point that we would like to make. And I would like to invite Mrs. Barbara Juszczyk, the Managing Director of Łukasiewicz Research Network Institute for Non-Ferrous Metals. With her expertise, and also both the scientific background and managerial background, she will share with us some of her ideas about how we can support strategic autonomy, raw material security, and skills and talents with the help of technology infrastructures. The floor is yours, Barbara.
Thank you very much for introducing me. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present a situation in Europe in the range of the qualification on scientific staff, technological infrastructure, raw material security as well as technological sovereignty in comparison to other countries. When I asked to prepare to keynote, I was thinking what will be inspire for you, what will draw to your attention, what will provoke to you to think about the facts, information I will present you. I hope that my speech will be a huge dose of information to you. Let me begin by analyzing the situation in terms of infrastructure and the level of research implementation. The level of research infrastructure in Europe compared to USA, China, or India is generally good, although each of these regions has its strengths and weaknesses. The level in European is very high, especially in the fields of basic research, nature science, and environmental technologies. The advantages include joint investment, for example, CERN, ITER, strategic planning, for example, the European Strategy Forum and Research Infrastructure, which coordinates continental development. One of the advantages is also a high level of openness and accessibility, well-developed international cooperation. The disadvantages is too much fragmentation. I mean managing from the position on individual states, which makes strategic investment difficult. There is also differences in the quality of infrastructure between countries. Countries such as Germany, France, and Scandinavia have a prominence. In addition, there is a lack of the long operational financing, which causes problems with maintenance and modernization of infrastructure. One of the challenges of the reduced regional inequalities between the Western and Central and Eastern Europe. There is also a shortage of strong research agenda, as in case of the USA or China. In the United States, compared to Europe or Asia, there is the biggest number of large research centers, for example, NASA and NSF, and is a very high level of funding. The annual federal budget for R&D in 2024 amounted to over $190 billion. We can also observe strategic centralization, for example, DARPA and NSF, which allows for quick decision-making and upscaling. There is also close cooperation with industry, allows some areas research are more military-oriented. The American R&D system consists of the activities of a diverse group of R&D performers and sources of funding. Performers and sources include private business in federal government, non-federal government, such as a state and local higher education institution, and other not-profit organizations. Organizations can have multiple roles in the performance and funding of R&D. They may perform R&D funded by themselves, by other, or by both. They may also only fund R&D outside the organization, or may fund both internal and external R&D. New data from the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics indicate the research and experimental development performed in the United States totaled $982 billion in 2022. On this total value, the business sector funded $673 billion, and the federal government funded $164 billion. Over the last decade, the average annual increase in the USL total R&D expenditure was 7.5%, measured at compound average growth rate. The recent 7.5% growth rate is higher than the observed over period decades. In 2022, the ratio of USA R&D expenditure to gross domestic products was 3.43%. The USA ratio also exceeded the other key R&D performing nationals such as China, almost 3%, France, and United Kingdom. Israel, which has over 6%, and South Korea, over 5%, had higher ratio than the United States, whereas the Taiwan has almost 4%, Germany over 3%, and Japan over also 3%, and had similar ratio to United States. The raising the ratio of US R&D and GDP in primary attribute to increased business funding of R&D. The business sector is by far the largest performer to USA R&D. The higher education sector accounted for just under half of basic research performance in 2022. The business sector was also the second largest basic research performer. That is why in Europe, we need to build a center of research financed by industry. However, in order to make it happen, we need to strengthen our European industry. In China, there has a huge public investment in infrastructure over the past 15 years. Strategic emphasis has been placed on developing areas such as AI, semiconductors, and nuclear energy. Central planning enables the construction of new facilities at the record pace. However, the quality and transparency of management in some centers is a challenge. In 2024, China allocated about $500 million for research and development. In China, fundamental research spending rose by 10.5% compared to the previous year. China is gradually taking over the key research area. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute confirmed that China dominates 37 out of 44 key technology. China has also been the top of the Nature Index for 2 years now, increasing to lead over the USA. This country is investing more and more investively in science, rising to a key of the world domination. Since the beginning of the 21st century, China has sent over 5 million students and scholars to study in other countries. Most of them studies science or engineering. A number of programs have been introduced to improve R&D levels. For example, the National Basic Research Program of China, known as the 973 program, is a project aimed at developing basic research, innovation, and technology, and is a part of the largest strategy, the National Key R&D Program of China. China R&D investment intensity exceeds of European average and is approaching OECD average. The majority of R&D expenditure, 77%, is generated by corporate sector, mainly state-owned. Government Research Institute came next. In 2024, the number of China's patents increased by over 30%, and the number of trademarks by over 9%. The country ranks 11 of the Global Innovation Index and remains a leader among upper middle incomes. China is no longer an imitator or produce low-quality science, but a science powerhouse on a par with the USA, both in terms of number of quality. Europe has an excellent and diverse research infrastructure, especially basic and interdisciplinary science, but USA offers the greatest coherence and strategic strength infrastructure with strong support of innovation. China, on the other hand, is catching up quickly, and in some areas, for example, photonics, supercomputers, are the quality of surprising the West. The certain asset at Europe is its scientific staff. In the STEM science, Europe has very high qualification compared to the US and China, although there are some different structure, funding, and working conditions. In Europe, you can observe fragmentation of scientific system between countries, lower salaries and limited career opportunities compared to USA, as well as outload of scientists to USA and other regions. Top universities and institutes such as MIT, Stanford, high salary, grants, and access to infrastructure attract scientists from all over the world to USA. One of the worrying phenomena observed in many European countries is the decline of interest in engineering and technical fields. We can see a decrease of the number of candidates for some engineering fields, for example, mechanics, electrical engineering, compared to social, medical, or computer science fields. There is a shortage of engineering of the labor market resulting from the low attractiveness of engineering professionals. The reason for this is the existing stereotypes. Engineering science are perceived as masculine, boring, and time-consuming. This is influenced by lack of the school education to lead to inspiration to choose to technical path, weaker promotion, technical fields compared to AI or psychology. It should be advised that the interest in engineering studies in Europe is lower than China and to some extent to the USA. When I was in China, I once asked the students from the Yellow Academy what they want to do be future. The answer was that we wanted to be famous physics, chemics. If you ask the same questions to young people in Europe, we sometimes answer would be they wanted to be a blogger and YouTuber. In China, we note a very high interest in the STEM fields. Over 50% students chose technical fields. There is a strong social and state pressure to choose particular fields such as engineering and IT. The state intensively supports the development of technical staff as a part of technological development strategy. For example, Made in China 2025. One of the hand of the USA, you observe an equal interest in choice of technical studies depending on the part of USA. Degree courses such as computer science, biomedical engineering, of data science attract many students, but the classic engineering, for example, mechanics, engineering, have a favor candidates. There is a larger participation of foreign students, mainly from Asia, in technical programs. Europe is worse than China in terms of the number of technical students, and compared to USA, is less dynamic in attracting young people to modern engineering courses. Poland, as a country, is doing quite well compared to European countries in terms of interest in technical courses, especially compared to Western and South European countries. In Poland, about 30% of students chose STEM majors, mainly computer science, engineering, and mathematics. Free education system in Poland allows for wide access to education. However, the problem is the high output for the graduates abroad. Poland is the one of the countries which above average interest in the technical majors in Europe, which is a positive side. However, in the older maintenance trend, it's necessary to invest in mathematics and science education in school and improve the quality of engineering education. Another problem is the lack of specialists to service the research infrastructure, especially in the context of rapidly developing technology and growing technical requirements. Many laboratories and research centers have problems with hiring qualified technical personnel. There is a particular deficit in specialized in fields such as automatics, optoelectronics, material science. Another problem is the aging of the technical staff. In many European centers, the average age in engineering is growing, and there is the lack of the replacement. Lack of the competence is mismatches is other trouble with companies, which companies must deal with. Highly specialized positions require many years of training, which is often not available in standard education programs. A significant barrier is lower salary in scientific institutions than in the private sector, which discourage specialists from working. There is also lack of career path or non-science staff, such as infrastructure, maintenance, engineering, and laboratory techniques. It should be emphasized that Europe has advanced research infrastructure, but increasingly suffering from the shortage of specialists to operate it. The problem is both the quantity and relevance of the competence. The situation can be improved by supporting vocational education and creating attractive career paths for technical research staff. The latest European Strategy Forum and Research Innovation Report included this problem and challenges. The forum draws attention to the need for greater transparency and financing that the need ensure adequate technical staff. The European Commission, in this the strategy Unlocking Europe for Growth Potential, has also emphasized the need for the radical action to overcome the gap in skill and human resources. The strategy aims to increase the availability of quality staff, including the scientific research sector. The shortage of skilled technical personnel in Europe poses serious challenges to the effective functioning of research infrastructure. There is a need to increase investment in technical education, improve working conditions, and create attractive career paths for technical specialists. The developed modern technology requires not only infrastructure and quality personnel, but also, maybe perhaps above all, raw material security. Raw material security is the basis of the other securities. There is no military security without raw materials one, as well as energy, healthy, ecological security, etc. We have to remember the energy transition is a material transition. European raw material sector faces complex challenge primarily due to its heavy reliance of imports from international suppliers, which produce over 70% of raw materials for battery and clean technology. A global demand races ensuring sustainable and reliable supplies has become crucial in European strategy autonomy in industrial competitiveness. Currently, Europe does not have sufficient competence and operation capability in key sectors such as mineral processing, recycling technology, and chemical technology to fully ensure in strategic autonomy and meet the growing needs of the green and digital economy. Europe has limited capacity to process and refine critical raw materials, for example, lithium, cobalt, neodymium, even though demand for them is growing. Technologies such as lithium battery, fuel cells, electrolyzer, wind turbines, traction motor, solar photovoltaics, heat pumps, data transition network, data storage, mobile devices, 3D printing technology, robotics, drones, and satellites need raw materials. Global demand for lithium and graphite for battery is expected to reach 19 and 4 times current global supply by 2050 respectively. The situation is similar for the cobalt. Most of the raw material processing takes place outside Europe, mainly in China, which dominates the processing market. For example, 90% of global rare earth refining. Only 2% of the raw materials used in our manufacturing wind energy infrastructure come from the Europe, and over 30% from the China. In addition, in the sectors such as chemical technology, metallurgy, materials, engineering, of waste management, there is a shortage of qualified staff. Engineering, technology operates. The education system in many European countries is not keeping up with the growing demand for highly specialized industrial skills. Europe is the leader in recycling common metals, for example, aluminium, copper, but has poor capability in recovering strategic raw materials from electronic waste and lithium-ion battery. Many technologies are in the pilot phase, and full-scale plants operate only a few countries, Germany, Belgium, in example, a Umicore company, or Northford from Sweden. Many regions for the European Union lack modern facilities for chemical and thermal waste treatment, and these processes are often expensive and environmentally difficult. In addition, permitting processes and regulatory batteries hinder the rapid development of the new plants. In the USA and China, the situation in terms of mineral processing, recycling technology, and the chemical industry is much more developed and advanced compared to Europe. Both countries have a great capability to extraction, processing, and recycling raw materials, and are global leaders in many areas, chemical and industrial technology. The USA has a strong raw material processing infrastructure, especially in areas of critical raw materials such as lithium, cobaltium, neodymium, and other rare earth elements. Much of the mining of processing industry is located in the western states such as Nevada and California. Although the USA limited production some minerals in recent years, years, there has been a great deal of investment in developing a domestic raw materials sector, as well as technology related to recycling lithium-ion battery. In the USA, the last few years have seen changes in the recycling sector. Recycling technology for battery, precious metal, and other critical raw materials are rapid development, thanks largely to private technology companies such as Tesla and Redwood Materials, which are investing in advanced recovery technology. The USA, global leader in the chemical industry, which uses coal and gas resources. The petrochemical, chemical, and pharmaceutical industry are one of the main pillars of American economy, with huge investment in modern chemical technologies. The USA also dominates the production of synthetic materials and polymers, which are widely used in the recycling and manufacturing new products. The USA Environmental Protection Agency focuses on the development of chemical technology that enable higher level of recycling of materials from electronic waste and industrial waste. China is absolutely leader of extraction, processing, and refining of mineral resources. The country controls about 70% of the production of rare earth minerals, which is essential for the production of electronics, battery, electronic motors, and other technology. China, in turn, is investing in the construction of new processing plants in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and ensure to constant access to the strategic raw materials. China is also dominating the recycling market, particularly in areas of metal and e-waste recycling. Although important bans have been introduced in the recent years on the West from the developed countries, China still has the largest market of the e-waste processing and battery recovery. China has developed technology for recycling in metals, cobalt, lithium, nickel, in the context of recycling used batteries, especially those used in the electrical vehicles. China has announced a comprehensive 3 years plan to digitalization in raw material industry, emphasizing the construction of state-of-the big data center dedicated to new materials. The plan spanning from 2024 to 2026 was jointly used by 9 government departments, including the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology. The initiative includes the establishment of 4 digitalization promotion centers and manufacturing innovation center for key segments with the raw material industry. The sector holds substantial, significant digital information manufacturing, contributing approximately 30% of the value-added output in China, large industrial company. China is making foreign investment in critical raw materials, especially rare earth metals, lithium, under the Green Belt Road Program, which is one of the components of China Belt of Roadmap Initiative. China is also giant in the production of industrial chemicals, including polymers, plastics, synthetic materials, and pharmaceuticals. The country is the world's largest producer of chemicals with huge investment in modern chemical technology. China has also developed advanced chemical technology for clean energy sources, for example, photovoltaic cells, batteries, which is of great importance in the context of the green transformation. The US and China have a great dominance over Europe in the processing of mineral resources, recycling technology, and the chemical industry. Although Europe is playing catch up, the US and China control key resources and have better infrastructure and more advanced technology in these sectors. China in particular has a dominant role in global raw material processing and recycling, whilst the USA leads to innovate chemical technology and battery recycling. All this shows that Europe needs to focus its effort to strengthen competitiveness, investing in recycling technology, developing new materials, and creating sovereign supply chains into these critical sectors. Much has been done recently to build the competitiveness European industry. but we will have to wait for the result. Therefore, we have to accelerate of aforementioned activities. IT raw materials supported by the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which is the body of the European Union, in the previous year announced the release of a pivotal policy paper calling for urgent investment commitment under the European Union's upcoming framework program to strengthen the European supply chain resilience for critical and strategic raw materials. Horizon Europe has invested 470 million euro on developing innovation solutions to reduce our dependency of critical raw materials. Projects include demonstration on innovation solutions to increase overall circularity of wind energy technology, development of recyclability index for photovoltaics products, and various projects under the Horizon Europe partnership and batteries, the creation of the digital passport to track battery materials, and demonstrating sustainable processes for recycling and battery raw materials. In February this year, the European Commission published the Clean Industrial Deal. In my opinion, it's a very important initiative aimed to increasing the competitiveness of European industry in face of the global challenge, such as high energy price and competition from the USA and China. The program assumes the decarbonization of industry by supporting energy-intensive sector and clean technology producing and reducing carbon dioxide emission, strengthening competitiveness by reducing energy costs, simplifying regulation, and increasing access to financing, development of circular economy, simplification of procedures. It's very important to adopt the Circular Economy Act in 2026 to accelerate the transformation towards a circular economy and ensure efficient use of raw materials. The goal is for the 24% of raw materials to come from the circular sources by 2040. Europe has technological and scientific potential, but does not yet have the operational capacity, human resources of industrial scale to compete effectively in areas raw material processing, advanced recycling, and industrial chemistry. Developing this competence is key to the becoming independent from third country and achieving the goals of the Green Deal. Moreover, Draghi's report, The Future of European Competitiveness, identifies a number of key issues related to European technological sovereignty. This document provides a comprehensive analysis of the challenge facing the European Union in the context of global technological competition, especially in the face of the dominance of the USA and China in the high-tech sector. Europe is losing growth significantly in the key technological areas. Only 4 of the world's 50 largest technology companies have European roots, and the European share of global technology revenues has fallen from the 20% in 2013 to 15% in 2023. This is particularly true in areas such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, cloud computing, and quantum technology. Europe is heavily dependent on important and advanced technology components, making it vulnerable to supply chain disruption. Examples include Taiwan dominating microchip production and its reliance of American and Chinese cloud computing and AI solution. The lack of sufficient investment in European innovation ecosystem is a key factor to decline of European digital leadership and overall productivity. Draghi argues also the European focuses too much on regulation instead of stimulating investment and bring new ideas to market. Differences in national politics, the lack of common industrial strategy, and the fragmentation of the internal market make it difficult to effectively use the European Union potential. Draghi emphasizes the need for better coordination and integration of action at the European level. The current regulatory and financial programs not support the rapid development of technology. The report suggests the need for simplification of regulation and the creation of more flexible mechanisms for financing innovation, including through joint public-private investment. In my opinion, the order the can't act this barrier, we need to increase investment, mobilize additional financial resources of European level to support strategic technology sectors. Initiate European projects in key strategic areas such as AI, semiconductors, circular economy, new materials. Simplify regulation, strengthen education and training, invest in the development of digital and technical competence among the European citizens to ensure access to a skilled workforce. Improve policy coordination, increase coherence and coordination of action at national and European Union level in terms of industrial and technological policy. I hope that presented fact will provide a solid basis for tomorrow, maybe today's discussion, and action toward the better Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the time to act. Thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Barbara, for sharing with us your insights into the European competitiveness in the global scene in the field of raw materials and critical materials. Now, I know that today we had a long afternoon. We have challenged you in many different ways, I think, including challenging your perception span as well. We started early, it's getting late. We also challenged probably your capacity to retain facts. We have started with a broad view on competitiveness and the challenges for Europe. We have went down to what we can do with technology infrastructures to address that, how we could design a European policy that would actually make a difference in the longer run for Europe. We went into the details of funding, how we can organize the debt, how we can mobilize the investments. We had some examples to see how things can work in practice. And now, so hopefully that would actually serve you as a basis for a different challenge that we'll have for you tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll actually want to tap on your brains in a very open manner for a big part of the day. We will be engaged in smaller discussions to have your expertise and your ideas about practical implementation of what we could do for technology infrastructures in the EU. So right now, after this afternoon of what I hope was a bit of a feast for your brain, I invite you to other types of feasts. We will provide you with some raw material fuel for tomorrow, for the next couple of hours. And in the meantime, also, please, we actually don't really have any time. I would invite you to go directly then to the room where we have the dinner set up. You will also have, hopefully, some feast for your soul. So for today, many thanks for your attention. That's all from me. Enjoy the evening.